April 26, 2023 meeting of the Union Township Zoning Commission, 7 o'clock. Ladies and gentlemen, if you would rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. First up, Mr. McCormick, will you call roll, please?
Yes. Mr. Shannon.
Yeah.
Mr. Toth.
Here.
Mr. Campbell.
Here.
Mr. Wing.
Here.
Mr. Lewis.
Here. Good, we're all here. Next item of business is approval of the minutes from our March 22nd, 2023 meeting.
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes.
I'll second that.
I've regularly made and seconded motion that we accept the minutes as distributed. Any discussion? Mr. McCormick, will you call the roll?
Yes. Mr. Shannon.
Yes.
Mr. Toth.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Mr. Lewis.
Yes.
Mr. Wing.
Yes.
Motion carries. Do we have any old business? Hearing no old business. So prior to opening up new business, I do want to provide a brief summary of how these zoning commissions proceed. So I'm going to provide you a brief overview with the process. When a case is called, we will hear from the applicant or their representative first. The commission reserves the right to question the applicant at any time. After the applicant's presentation, we will open the floor to anyone else who wishes to speak in support of the proposal. Then we will open the floor to those wishing to speak against the proposal. Those wishing to speak must fill out and provide us with speaker registration forms. All speakers must speak at the podium and into the microphone for recording purposes. Each speaker must identify themselves for the record. The commission reserves the right to ask questions of persons speaking against the proposal. The expectation is for speakers and observers to maintain the professional decorum of this meeting at all times. We understand that individuals are often passionate regarding their positions and preferences. However, this meeting cannot properly function if it becomes unruly. We ask that all speakers be conscious of the time and that speakers be concise and avoid making repetitious statements. Once those in opposition to the proposal have spoken, the case will be closed for public comment. Discussion at that time is limited to the commission, although the commission may ask questions of zoning staff, the applicant, or those in opposition. After discussion, I will call for a motion from the commission. The motion requires a second, after which the motion itself is open to discussion. A vote will be called and action taken on the motion. When a motion receives a majority vote, the commission issues its recommendations to the Board of Trustees in accordance with the wording of the motion. Our options are to recommend approval of the requested change with some modifications, or denial of the requested change. The purpose of this motion is to make a recommendation to the Board of Trustees regarding the case. The authority to grant an applicant's zoning request or to deny an applicant's zoning request rests with the Board of Trustees. These cases will be heard at the next meeting of the Union Township Trustees. Now opening new business.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we consider reversing the order of the cases we're reviewing tonight due to the anticipated time required on some of the cases. On the two cases, I recommend I move to hear case 4-23-Z first, and then 2-23-Z second.
Second that motion.
I've regularly made and seconded a motion to place case 4-23-Z and hear it first, and then hear number 2-23Z afterwards. Any discussion? Mr. McCormick, if you'd call the roll.
Mr. Shannon.
Yes.
Mr. Toth.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Mr. Lewis.
Yes.
Mr. Wing.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion carries. We're in new business, therefore I'm calling case number 4-23-Z, which is a proposed zone map amendment from R2 residential to PD plan development. Mr. McCormick, do you have a case summary, please?
Yes. Applicant for this case is, and excuse me if I mispronounce the name, Clermont, and the site location is 4127 Mount Carmel Tabasco Road, and some unaddressed parcels on Old Orchard Lane, with the parcel numbers listed in this slide. There are 4 of them. And the 4 parcels total 1.217 acres approximately. And the request is for this property, which is zone R2, single-family residential, to be rezoned to PD, Plan Development District. The location of the subject property is on the western side of Mount Carmel Tabasco Road, on the north side of Old Orchard Lane, in the southwestern quadrant of Union Township. Currently, the properties, as I mentioned, are zoned R2, with the adjoining properties zoned R2 to the south, to the east, to the west, and to the north. We have planned development, which is a part of the Bellevue apartment community, and which is, in this case, is in a proposed expansion of that community, of those apartments. We have uses in the surrounding area being mixed, with much of the multifamily in the area developed prior to the current zoning resolution, or current zoning for that property. Limited non-conforming commercial properties front Mount Carmel Tabasco as well, with attached housing products located to the northwest and east. We have some commercial located further to the south, approaching 125, with single-family housing primarily concentrated on Old Orchard Lane. The relationship to the Union Township Comprehensive Plan, the Horizon 2030 Union Township Comprehensive Land Use Plan indicates the proposal is located within the Mount Carmel Tabasco mixed-use corridor. Currently, the northern portion of the corridor contains a variety of commercial, quasi-institutional uses and varying intensity residential uses. Limited development and redevelopment has occurred in areas of the corridor since the adoption of the plan. Mount Carmel Tabasco Road is a minor arterial 2-lane road with a traffic volume of approximately 10,200 average trips per day. Significant residential populations are located in or near this area, and the lack of sidewalks results in a safety issue for those seeking alternative modes of transportation. Among other things, the plan calls for sidewalks in this area, the use of cross-access easements, and consolidated shared driveway configurations wherever practical, and site development to be conducted in a manner that focuses on maximizing land use efficiency with infill development. For commercial development or conversions to the use of traditional building materials, adequate vegetative buffering, and landscaping strategies along shared property lines and landscaping enhancements along the corridor frontage is required. So here's another image of the property looking at the oblique, looking north. The subject rezone property is immediately to the south of what's outlined in red. What's outlined in red is actually part of the Bellevue apartment complex, which was the second phase of that development, which I think was updated in 2013, if I remember right. In terms of the relationship to the Union Township zoning resolution, we refer to Article 6, Sections 680 to 687, particularly paying attention to certain sections here in the staff report. The PD district purpose in 680 is to provide sites for business or mixed business residential developments at appropriate locations in relation to existing potential land uses, to afford an attractive setting for developments, and to harmonize proposed developments with surrounding land uses. 681, if a conflict arises between these PD regulations or an approved PD plan and other sections of the resolution, the PD regulations and approved plan shall prevail. Section 682, land use for any property in the PD district shall be consistent with the use, design, and details contained in the approved PD plan for that property and any conditions of approval. Other applicable regulations from this resolution, such as the nuisance regulations, also apply. And pursuant to an approved plan, allowed uses in the PD district may include those stated in the B1 and M1 districts or substantially similar uses as determined by the zoning commission and board of trustees. Section 683, property owner may submit an application for a zone change to PD Plan Development District to the Union Township Planning and Zoning Department in accordance with the sections that I mentioned there earlier and in accordance with Ohio Revised Code Chapter 519. Section 684 outlines the PD requirements, which includes everything in Section 1131 for site plan review and includes the items that are underneath 684, A through F, which includes the information that you see here on this particular slide, including landscaping. Supplemental provisions are listed in 687 and deal with a number of different items. I did not include those in there in the, I included them in the written report, but not the visuals for you this evening. In terms of the staff review and analysis of this particular project, the map amendment is proposed for the 4 parcels located off Mount Carmel Tabasco Road or Old Orchard Lane. The zone changes for 1 8-unit building to be constructed on those 4 parcels and to be incorporated with the existing apartment complex. Within this application, a proposed major amendment, case 313Z, major amendment for the Board of Trustees, can also be found. It was a joint submittal, sorry, this is very touchy. The joint submittal, the major amendment case will go to the Board of Trustees at their next meeting. So you will see in your packets some information related to the zone map amendment, some information related to the major amendment, but the major amendment is for the larger piece to the north. And so those other buildings that are proposed are on that other piece, whereas the 4 impacted parcels in this application really are for just the 1 building with the 8 units. And that is currently scheduled to be heard at the I believe it's May 9th trustee meeting instead of May 10th. I think that's a typo. Let me double check here. Yeah, it's May 9th. So that is the wrong date. So that's the date they would currently be scheduled to be heard. At that time, the trustees will vote to approve, modify, or deny the major amendment application involving the 3 additional 8-unit buildings for that major amendment case, as well as the rezone here that we're looking at this evening. And with this particular plan this evening involves some connectivity to Old Orchard Lane. Should the Board of Trustees choose to vote unfavorably for the major amendment application, the need for the additional access off of Old Orchard Lane may decrease, and we may need to look at modifying the plan for the site if the rezone would move forward favorably. After reviewing the application, it can be noted that the planned development district has been identified as the preferred method to achieve the goals of harmonious mixed use in the corridor, and therefore presents an opportunity for construction of a development that buffers and complements the surrounding land uses. Further, the PD designation allows for greater flexibility in site design and promotes high-quality aesthetics through the deployment of monument signage, landscaping, enhanced facade materials, and innovative site design. In this sense, then, the proposal is consistent with the adopted land use plan. Further, the applicant's proposal is consistent with the lane densities that within the existing development, and that is around 6.9 units an acre, which is approximately what's on the parcel to the north right now. The applicant's proposed stormwater system is designed to be integrated into the existing facilities to the northwest, which are where I'm circling right now with my cursor. The proposed building would be a 2-story all-brick multifamily residential structure that matches the other buildings that are already on the site. The proposed residential structure would be approximately 200 feet off Mount Carmel Tabasco Road and about 15 feet at its closest point to the neighboring property. And that neighboring property is the property owner who is potentially looking to sell these 3 pieces on Old Orchard Lane for this development to occur. Each unit is proposed to be 1,329 square feet and would consist of 2 bedrooms and 2 full bathrooms. Proposed lighting in this application consists of illuminated front corners as wall-packed units that are downward directed. The sidewalks are proposed to be extended along Mount Carmel Tabasco Road, with staff recommending additional sidewalks to be placed along Old Orchard Lane, which is in the staff recommendations. Landscaping has been provided with this application along the parking lot and proposed drive off of Old Orchard Lane. There are no plans noted for the existing residential property located at 4127 Mount Carmel Tabasco Road. However, the demolition of this existing home would be preferred to keep the uses uniform on the property. We'll come back to that here in a moment. In terms of the actions required, before I get into the slides of the site, in accordance with sections 680 to 687 of the zoning resolution, and also Article 4, Section 410 of the zoning resolution, the zoning commission purposes to enter a motion to recommend approval with some modification or denial of the applicant's request to rezone the subject properties from R2 to PD as submitted with any further modifications as deemed appropriate. I'm going to get into the slides of the property. So this is looking northwest as you enter the property at 4137 Mount Carmel Tabasco Road towards the existing housing. So you can see the type of units that are there. This is what is proposed for the one building with the 8 units on Old Orchard Lane. This is looking southeast towards Mount Carmel Tabasco Road from the existing housing. The house that you see there on the right is the one that's proposed to be demolished. This is looking from left to right, from southeast to south. South would be approximately the area where the proposed building would be located. This is looking east on Old Orchard Lane, the property there. This is probably standing in a rough area where the building would be situated if built. And this is looking at the back of the house of the owner who is looking to potentially sell those 3 parcels. This is on Old Orchard, looking east towards Mount Carmel Tabasco Road. The site would be on your left. This is looking west, looking on Old Orchard. The site would be on your right, and on the right-hand side in that area is approximately where we anticipate the access would be based on what was drawn. This picture is looking north towards the affected area. The proposed building, I think, would be kind of where the stand of trees are there on the right-hand side of the overhead electric lines. And this is standing pretty much in the same portion of the site looking west along Old Orchard Lane. And this is looking east from that same general area towards approximately where the building would be. This is looking northwest at the detention basin and the overhead electric lines, and that detention basin is there on the right-hand side. And this is looking as one would access back into the existing site northeast. The recommended modifications are as noted. The applicant would need to address concerns of the Clermont County Engineers Office, Water and Sewer District, and Union Township Fire Department during final development approval. A signage plan would ultimately need to be submitted if applicable, which it may not be applicable. All signage would be limited to monument signage, if applicable, capped at a height of not more than 8 feet from finished grade. Landscaping buffer would need to incorporate mounting techniques along with evergreen plantings to help increase screening between residential and multifamily uses, subject to administrative review and approval. Sidewalks would need to be included down Old Orchard Lane to promote pedestrian connectivity through the township. The applicant would need to provide final open space calculations and percentages on the plans, even though the area shown appears to exceed a 20% open space requirement. The existing home at 4127 Mount Carmel Tabasco Road would need to be demolished. And in a case that the Board of Trustees would deny case 3-13-Z for the major amendment application, revisions to the access off of Old Orchard Lane and parking shall be considered, subject to administrative review and approval. With that, that is the conclusion of the report, staff report. Do you have any questions for me?
Any on the commission have a
No.
question?
No,
Would you like for me to go back to any particular slide?
not at this time, I don't.
So I'll now call on the applicant or the representative.
Thank you. I'm Carl Hartman, 3478 Holly Ridge Drive, Cincinnati, Ohio, 45245. We are engineers for Prem Dahama, who is the applicant and the owner of the current apartment buildings there. First of all, I want to thank you for moving us up on the agenda. I think that is in our interest, so thank you so much. We have a little bit of a unique case here tonight in which we show a site plan which covered two submissions. One for the rezoning of the parcels down there in the southeast part, and then it shows what our major amendment to the PD will be that we're taking before the trustees. So I hope that's not too confusing in that view. But Mark and I discussed this at some length, and I think we both concurred that it was wise to show everything at one time so everybody knows what's going on and what our ultimate plans are. Mount Carmel Tabasco Road is a road that has, as pointed out by Mark, many diverse uses, starting over Mount Carmel all the way over to Ohio Pike. We've got churches, we've got mini storage warehouses, we've got plumbing shops, we've got a lot of other multifamily. And I think the fact that this area has gravitated into a multifamily condominium type community is its location. It's close to shopping, it's close to people's churches, it's close to habits that they have, and it's close, easy access onto 275. And I think this is what makes it a very popular area for people to move. He's experienced with his current Bellevue apartments. He's had these, and he actually winds up having them pretty well fully occupied, oftentimes with a waiting list for people to come. As you can see, what we have here is a building. The new building will be the same as what you saw. They resemble a house because they're going to be brick on all four sides. There'll be a pitched roof, 2 stories maximum height, and so therefore, you know, we're not sticking something 40 feet up in the air in this regard. We have read over everything and well in advance. The recommendations that are modifications, actually, I think we've addressed some of those and submitted additional plans that we can take before the trustees that address these. We find these all acceptable and hope that you do, and I would like to have the opportunity to address any comments later on. I think that pretty well concludes our presentation. We welcome, Prem and I will both be welcome to answer any questions you may have.
Does anyone have any questions?
I have no question.
I do, I have one. Mr. Hartman, there was a mention of the closest building to property line was noted in the report as being 15 feet. Could you tell me where that's at?
Well, I can't reach that high, but actually, it'd be that corner there, the southeast corner of that building over to the adjacent house. Actually, what we have, Prem has already purchased the one property, those 3 other lots he has under contract to purchase. The seller of those 3 lots is a person who owns that house fronting onto Mount Carmel Tabasco Road. He actually submitted a letter in support, naturally, and I think we included that in our application. So the 15-foot dimension for that one building would be at that point.
Okay, so be aware that if that property is not acquired, we have a minimum of 20 feet. That'll have to be a 20-foot span to the closest property line that is not owned by the applicant.
That can be accomplished.
All right.
That can be, as you see there, we do have room to move that building to the left or to the west. That would be no problem at all.
And the reason for the access on Orchard instead of accessing from inside?
Well, I think, you know, the size of the community and the fact that we have one primary entrance off of Tabasco Road, in cases of fire, EMS, any other calls in that, it's always desirable to have an alternate way of coming in. And I think that's why the access on Old Orchard is planned.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Mr. Hartman.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd.
Okay.
Mr. Dahama, would you like to speak? You don't have to. Okay. That's fine. Does anyone else wish to speak for that application? Okay. Hearing none, seeing none, I'll now open the floor to those who wish to speak in opposition to the project. I have Donna Perry. If you'd like to still speak, if you'd like to approach the podium and introduce yourself.
Donna Perry, and I'm at 571 Old Orchard Drive, which is directly across the street from where the new building is going to be. And I have several concerns about the new building going in there. For one, we are on a very small road. It's a very small road. And if we're gonna have more access to traffic coming in and out of that road, we on that street do not know how that is going to handle that much more traffic coming in and out of there. It's a very small street. And then we have the house that's where the apartment is being built right across from there. The drainage that is in front of that house and that goes right on my property, we are not sure how that is going to affect. There is so much sewerage back there, how that is going to affect because it goes across the street as well and it does not drain. The sewerage is just laying there. And with more water and more sewerage coming in there, where is that going to go? I mean, that is two of our biggest concerns. For one, the traffic, and for two, because they have cattails that are growing right across our street that is nothing but sewer. Where is this water going to go if they're building another building there? I mean, that's one of our major concerns, is the sewerage and the traffic on that road. Because where those cattails are and where that sewerage is, you cannot even see to back out of my driveway. And so we cannot imagine more traffic coming up and down that road and sitting there trying to get out on Mount Carmel Tabasco Road. It's just not feasible. And the construction that it's gonna cause when they're building the new building, we have people that of course work second shift that are going to be interrupted by their sleeping habits with them, building all that new building there. I mean, that's gonna affect some of their sleeping habits. Property values are going to decrease because of course the building's gonna be right there. The people where the buildings, which is for the next meeting, that are gonna be right behind their house, they have no yards anymore. They have nothing. They're gonna be looking out at apartment buildings, period. And then down at the end of the street, of course, it's like you have so much traffic going up and down, it's just a concern. It's a very big concern about the traffic on how that road is going to handle anymore. So that's basically our concerns that I can speak for. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Perry.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Mr. Hartman.
Yes, Mr. Lewis.
Mr. Hartman, what type of plans do you have? I'm not seeing a retention basin, or,
Yes, there is, definitely.
okay, can you point it out?
Yes, there is an existing detention basin to the, in there.
Oh, okay, so that's the
What we
one,
will do-
you're planning on routing the water from the new impervious surfaces to that same retention
Oh,
basin?
yes, our development will be tributary to the detention basin, and when we put in, when we put in the detention basin, we may in fact have a positive effect upon the negative things that she was mentioning. The other thing that I would say that, like I mentioned, the second entrance over there is primarily for, what I feel, those that may have need of a EMS run, something like this. If desired, we could put a breakaway gate in there, which would limit the traffic coming back out onto Old Orchard. And so that could be resolved in that manner.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Linda Wilson.
I'm getting old. I really don't have anything written down, but I am at 558 Old Orchard Drive, where those are gonna be built. And, my dad bought that house in 55, okay? And we've been dealing with building around us forever. At Apple Valley at the end of the street, where basically threatened that if we continued to complain about it, that they would take the road all the way to Beechmont before Fox Chase was done. Okay, that's the first one. Then there was Old Orchard condominiums behind us, which took, used a road that went through her yard. It wasn't hers then, it was Hubbard's yard, to move the trucks through, okay? So then we have, what else? I mean, this guy, who enough is not enough, that he has to keep building on every piece of green grass. And it's beginning to really irritate me, and I apologize, but, you know, I've been here before with this guy, and it's like, it's not his home. His home is in Montgomery, right? Am I stating that right? You live in Montgomery?
Ma'am, that's not,
Well, I'm just saying, and
not
so
clear.
this is not his community. This is my community. It's not your house, it's not your community, it's my community. And behind me, I don't know how much, there's woods, just enough for the deer and the animals back there and some privacy. Since he built the last one, it looks like a UFO mothership at night. The lights are so bright, and it's the newest one that he did. And I just think that, I don't know where he gets off doing this, you know, adding to our street. We got the people in the back. There's tons of traffic on our street. I can't even get out because of the guy living in his rental, because the chick's parked right here and you can't see. There's gonna be an accident. I don't want him building behind my home. There's just not enough space. There's underground sewage there. And you know, that's my privacy to the condos behind me. And I don't even know why they aren't even here. They should be here too, because it's gonna affect them. So, last time we were here, there was a lot of people from Old Orchard condominiums. I mean, like I said, my dad bought that house when it was first built. I lived there when there was an orchard at the end of the street. You know, and it's just, I mean, Jesus. You know, if I could, I'd stop the zoning and allowing people to rent homes, because they don't have any skin in the game. They're not a part of the community. I mean, I love every one of my neighbors. And the woman who lives next to me has known me since I was 15, you know, so I just don't think it's right to try and compact as much as you can in a small amount of space because you want to make money. That's just not how it works. That's not how it's supposed to be. That's not the way it should be. I mean, he's got enough apartments there. You know, it's just, it's easy for people who don't live there to make our lives miserable because that's what they want and they can do it. But sometimes you just gotta say no for the people who've been there. You know, hopefully I'm not putting you to sleep. I'm just saying.
thank you.
Thank you.
John Becker?
Good evening. My name's John Becker. My wife Sherry and I built a new house on Mount Carmel, Tabasco, 4122. It's right across from Old Orchard. We've been there 4 years, and I can't count how many wrecks are there because of people trying to pull into Old Orchard. So if you're gonna ingest more traffic coming out of there, you're either gonna have to widen the lane, widen Tabasco Road, and that's not in the plans, the way I understand. Second thing I have here is, when I built my house, I didn't have enough water pressure to take a shower. Clermont County Water Works came out, they turned it up, and it still didn't have enough pressure. They referred me to a plumber, so I had to put a pump in my basement, $1,900. Then I was told everybody in the new neighborhood behind me had to put pumps in their house because they couldn't get water pressure. So if we're gonna add more apartments to this and more water, is he gonna put a water tower in? Because Clermont County was gonna put a water tower in at the end of Tabasco, and they decided not to. Now with all this new development, all these new apartments and condos coming in, what's that gonna affect everybody else? Plus the drainage. If you come down Mount Carmel Tabasco Road from Beachmont Avenue, there's a little turn right there. Nobody sees people stopping to pull in Old Orchard. Since I've been there, I can count 10 wrecks, 5 of them in my front yard, 4 mailboxes down. I pay a whole hell of a lot in taxes for that house. Way more than anybody else probably on Tabasco does. That's my main concern. My other concern is, when I built my house there, zoning was on me every day. I had the zoning guy there, complaining about something, trash, this, that, and the other. I took pictures tonight of the last project that was built 2 years ago, and they haven't cleaned the trash up from that yet. Why aren't they being picked on? I was being picked on every day. I was threatened they were gonna stop the construction on my house if I didn't get a dumpster. I had 2 dumpsters. People were dropping stuff off. Mr. Philpott would call me every night, because I lived right down the street in another house on Sugar Maple, and they were dumping stuff in my dumpster. So I was paying for people to dump in my dumpsters, and I got them from Mr. Evans right here. So he did all my gravel, everything. My main concern is, if they're gonna build these apartments, are they just gonna leave the trash there? I know where he lives in Indian Hill, they're not gonna accept that. Why should we accept that? My main concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Patty Philpott?
Hi, my name's Patty Philpott. Junior and I live at 4130 Mount Carmel, Tabasco, and we own the property next door at the daycare, 4132 Mount Carmel, Tabasco Road. And when they were talking about the drainage, to pull the drainage from Old Orchard to go north into that basin it's a long drop in order for the water to go, because as you know, we've had some torrential rains. That basin that goes under Mount Carmel Tabasco Road goes past 4132, which comes from our backyard. So Russ Bucieri built his basin when he owned the daycare and put the concrete slabs in it. And he has, when we obtained the building, he said, make sure that stays clear. So it is hard to clear all of the debris out of it, because it just grows all the grass. And when you see what's on the west side of Mount Carmel Tabasco Road, which is over with this gentleman's property, you don't see a lot of people out there maintaining that. So you do see the grass grow up, and it backs up into the 4132 property. And our backyard can be a swamp. So sometimes it takes 2-3 months before we can get the grass cut because of the drainage. And then to be able to back up into 4132, that building, we have to have that drain clear. There's just when you look at the property, it goes down. And Russ told me that there was a lake a little pond back there, and he built in 1970. So it's perfect drainage for the lower part. It has to have that drainage. If you're gonna put more in it from Old Orchard, it's not gonna be productive. You're not gonna get rid of, you're gonna have the runoff. I don't know about sewage. I don't know that sewage is the right term for that, because we're on public sewer. So to have sewage in there, I don't smell any septic like when I was a kid. So I don't know that if you guys would, maybe it's just the runoff water, but we do have a torrential amount of rain, and that the distance is just, to me, from the experience we've had in owning the building of 4132, that it's just not it's going to be awful for us. And also, like John was saying, with the water pressure, I did notice that my water pressure was lower after John moved in. And so I did call the water company to come out and test the water. And he did test the spigot outside, and he said, yes, it is low. There's really nothing you can do. You could see about getting a pump or whatever. But I am concerned about the water pressure getting worse with the additional people using it. And then, of course, the traffic. It's crazy. There's just a lot of turns, people making a left, or even they may even make a right into Old Orchard, and it's like, how do you, but that's still a problem, yeah. So traffic is a problem, a lot of accidents. We even got on our Ring camera, we got a lady who was pulling out of Old Orchard and hit his telephone pole, John's telephone pole, airbag went off, she's driving down the road with the airbag going off. And we had it recorded on our Ring, but it happens all the time. And then the road in front of our house, I don't know if it's washing away. And so I don't know if that causes some accidents too. I don't know. We've had 3 accidents in our front yard. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak against? Or, Mr. Hartman, do you have something you'd like to say?
Yes, I'd like to respond.
If you'd please come to the podium.
Thank you, thank you. The Clermont County Sewer and Water Department have sent correspondence indicating that they do have capacity for both sewer and water to serve this site. And that, as you know from this, originally the development here, there's not a major, but there is a drainage feature that goes from the east to the west through the original part of the property. Our detention basin will be expanded to accomplish that and to accomplish our development. I firmly believe that we could possibly help some of the conditions of the existing residences on Old Orchard by our construction. We'll be putting some sort of catch basins out here and by pipe taken into the detention basin. And so therefore we will take, and I think be a positive impact upon that.
So instead of the water moving on the empty lot towards Old Orchard, once you're graded and paved in, it will drain the opposite direction back towards your retention
Detention
basin.
basin, correct.
Correct.
We'll be able to accomplish that. You know, that's a fact of engineering, and I can engineer that. You're in the county, you have your stormwater maintenance people. They do a very thorough job of reviewing our plans. Believe me, I have experienced that, and they do a thorough job, and we comply. And they built it, when they built, and the projects we have built where we've had detention basins and that, we have not found any negative impact by our detention basins in this regard. The discharge from a detention basin is a controlled orifice. The size of the pipe is controlled to make the pre-development flow equal to or less than was before the development. The post-development flow will be equal to or less than the pre-development flow. Stormwater is a big thing. You know, this is something that's been in this county for years, and that in the early 1990s, the county enacted their stormwater management regulations, and they continue to enforce that to a good degree, and we concur with how they do it in that regard. And again, we could talk about a breakaway gate, if you're talking about eliminating the maximum traffic on Old Orchard, only for an emergency situation, fire engine or something can break away the gate and get access in. But we feel that, you know, that for people, it's just, you know, I experienced a heart attack, and I appreciated that the squad could get to me to take me to the hospital. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman. If it's very brief, Mr. Becker.
Mr. Hartman is saying that Clermont County says there's plenty of water pressure to go to these apartments. They told Patty Philpott that the pressure was down. They told me they would not do nothing for my pressure. I couldn't even take a shower when I first moved into this house. I've got a very nice house, if you've seen it on 4122. I had to put a pump in. So either Clermont County's telling him something wrong, or they're telling us wrong. So I think we need to go to Clermont County first and find out who's telling who what. That's my opinion.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Any others wishing to speak in opposition who have not already done so? Okay, seeing no one else, we're now going to close the public portion of that case. So conversation and discussion is reserved to members of the commission. Would anyone like to start regarding this case? Mr. Wayne?
I
Mr.
would,
Lewis?
if we do recommend approval, I would require that we put in we convert that Old Orchard access to emergency use only. And that way, there'd be no additional traffic. It would only be, as Mr. Hartman described, a breakaway that's used for fire engines, ambulances, police cars, so forth. And that eliminates the traffic load to Old Orchard, and we continue to use now. But I would also indicate in a motion that we would allow the applicant to reverse the facing direction of the building, if they so chose to do it, face it into the facility rather than out towards Old Orchard, which is how it's facing now, I believe, is the.
Right.
So I would give that option to the, if we recommend approval. And we are in a focus district. We're in the Mount Carmel Tabasco Focus District that specifically calls for this type of development. Now, we're not looking at the 3 units. It is getting a little crowded back there, but we're looking at the single unit, and there's plenty of room for that single unit. We do have to maintain the 20-foot setback, and we could include that as an additional requirement. The 20-foot setback has to be maintained.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
I particularly think the breakaway is a very fortunate idea. It should alleviate that particular issue. Mr. Shannon, any comments? Mr. Toft?
No, I concur with it, Mr. Lewis.
Well, then I'll ask if anyone would like to formulate a motion.
I can work on a motion.
We'd appreciate
Yes,
that, Mr.
I'll
Lewis.
begin formulating one. Now, we would, since we're recommending the closure of the orchard access to general public, I believe that one of the recommendations made in our staff report would not be considered an issue. We could remove it. It's that sidewalks would need to be run down Old Orchard. I don't see a requirement to run sidewalks down Old Orchard if we're not going to continue with the
Access.
That's number 4 on
Right.
the recommendation. So would we drop that? Mr. McCormick, do you have a position on that? If we would choose, as we're going to recommend, closing off the access to Old Orchard, general access, that we would not need the sidewalks at that time? I don't think it would fall into the category, and I believe once we close off access, there's simply landscaping there, and there would be no requirement by the applicant to put in the sidewalks.
I would agree with that.
All right, thank you. And then that would also impact item number 7.
Right.
And I think we could leave number 7 out. That whether they approve the expansion or not, I would still indicate that we should keep that access to Old Orchard closed. All right. All right, I'm ready to craft the motion, to read it.
All right, Mr. Lewis.
Regarding case 04-23-Z, Parem Dahama, Dama, parcels number 413-214-E001, 413-214-E006A, 413-214-E008A, and 413-214-E01A. The Zoning Commission finds that the submitted PD application zone change request is consistent with the Horizon 2030 Land Use Plan, but does not meet all of the plan development application requirements of a PD district plan. Therefore, this commission recommends a submitted plan be approved contingent upon adherence to the noted modifications as specified in this motion. All required supplemental information and plan modifications must be completed and submitted to the planning director no later than 1 week prior to the trustees' hearing of this case. A finding of fact would be that this property resides in the Mount Carmel Tabasco Road Mixed-Use Corridor. The subject property is located within the Mount Carmel Tabasco Road Mixed-Use Corridor, which indicates that the area should be a blend of housing and commercial diversity. Areas of focus in this corridor when considering zoning changes include access control, aesthetic enhancements, and commercial residential buffering. Now, the required modifications are as follows. The applicant shall address the concerns of the Clermont County Engineers Office, Clermont County Water and Sewer District, and the Union Township Fire Department during final development approval. Second, monument-style signage constructed to a height of no more than 8 feet from finished grade shall be required, standard for all new and/or replacement on-premise signage installed on the property, subject to administrative review and approval. The landscaping buffer shall incorporate mounding techniques along with evergreen plantings to help increase screening between residential and multifamily uses, subject to administrative review and approval. The applicant shall provide final open space calculations and percentages on the plans, even though the area shown appears to exceed the 20% open space requirement. Number 4, the existing home at 4127 Mount Carmel Tabasco Road needs to be demolished, subject to administrative review and approval. 5, the applicant's proposed access from Orchard Lane shall be for emergency access use only. The applicant has the option to reverse the orientation of the proposed 8-unit building to face into the existing development. And final modification, a minimum 20-foot setback will be recognized and required for all building to property boundary locations. That completes my motion.
Call for second.
I'll second it.
Have a regularly made and seconded motion. Ms. McCormick, will you call the roll?
But we have to see if anybody has.
Oh, yeah, any discussion? Sorry. Does anyone have any discussion of the motion? Hearing none. Now, Mr. McCormick, if you'd like to call the roll, please.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Wing.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. If I could add something, I am willing to meet with Philpott or anybody ahead of the next meeting to take a look at their drainage issues and see if whether we can't find some sort of solution to it before the next meeting. So I offer to meet with them.
Thank you, Mr. Hartman. That's something that can be done.
I
on your guys'
understand.
time.
I just wanted
But,
to make you
wanna
aware
announce when it
that I'm
comes
willing to
before
do
the
that.
trustees?
So this case will come before the trustees at their May 9th meeting, correct, Mr. McCormick?
That is what is scheduled right now.
Thank you. Okay.
Recommend that anyone who's in previous cases is able to leave now if they so choose to do so.
For anyone who would like to not stay for the second case, you're free to leave. You're also free to stay if you'd like. So I'm now going to call case number 2-23-Z, a zone map amendment from ER Estate Residential to PD Plan Development. Does the applicant or their representative wish to speak on this matter?
You want me to give the report?
Oh, I apologize. I'm not used to doing two, excuse me. Yes, if you please give us a staff report, that might be helpful.
Okay. The nature of the request is the applicant has asked for a zone map amendment, requesting that one parcel totaling 11.711 acres in Union Township be rezoned from estate residential to planned development to to allow for a series of uses, including landscaping, agricultural uses, nursery uses, residential uses, and indoor storage uses on the property. Subject parcel is noted here on the slide, and also in the location part of the staff report. Subject property is owned by Mount Carmel Farms LLC. Is located approximately 4,000 feet southeast of the Mount Carmel Road and Round Bottom Road intersection. All of the affected property is zoned estate residential. The affected property is bordered to the northwest by single-family detached structure residential R1. The remaining property in Union Township is zoned estate residential. And to the west in Anderson Township, the immediate adjacent property is zoned as an ID industrial district with a mix of AA residential district further to the west and south. And as one goes to the north and west a bit, the industrial districts pick back up in Anderson Township. As far as the background in this particular case, the applicant, through one company, purchased the subject property in 2012 and retains the property through another company at this time. In the past 10, 11 years or so, it appears that 9 buildings have been situated on the Union Township portion of the property, many, if not all of which were acknowledged by the applicant as being intended for agricultural uses, with the example given being a cattle and hay barn structure for some documentation on a structure we have from 2013. The applicant sought and appears to obtain agricultural exemptions for these structures. Between 2018 and 2020, it appears as though the Clermont County Auditor reclassified the primary uses on the property from agricultural to commercial. In August of 2022, the Township Planning and Zoning staff received an official complaint from an adjoining property owner that there were illegal uses on the property. The zoning inspector subsequently inspected the property and issued a 15-day citation letter on October 12, 2022, which was included in your packet, and which acknowledged the unauthorized commercial uses and structures on the property at that time. The unauthorized uses included an auto mechanic shop with unlicensed and operable vehicles parked on the exterior of the affected building, a company called Televac Environmental with large commercial vehicles in operation, a company called Native Shield Organic Mosquito and Deer Control, and 2 landscaping companies called American Landscapes and Must Lawn and Landscape. The unauthorized structures noted were the structures that have been placed on the property through the agricultural exemption process rather than the conventional zoning permit process, since there was no agricultural use on the property at that time that the inspector could see. In the past few months, Township staff has worked with the owner and applicant to find ways to potentially resolve the noncompliance issues. As the applicant's statement of reasons for proposed amendment indicates, the property's use has also, quote, been called into question in active litigation, and this application for a PD seeks to dispel any confusion as to what the permitted use of the property is, given its unique position of lying within 2 separate zoning districts and its history. In short, the applicant has submitted this PD request to attempt to address the township's non-compliance issues as well as the aforementioned active litigation. Moving forward with the relationship to the Union Township Comprehensive Plan, you can see another view of the site here with the oblique on the staff slides. The comprehensive plan indicates the subject property is not located within a designated focus area corridor. In fact, the closest focus area is the Little Miami Lower East Fork Corridor, Natural Resource Corridor, which is approximately 3,400 feet to the north of the property. Since the project is not located within a designated corridor, there are no specific policy recommendations for the subject property in that area. In the absence of the future land use policies and recommendations of the area in which the property is located, the mission statement and goals of the comprehensive plan should be referenced and utilized and are included in the next page of the staff report. And I'll go through some of that. The mission statement for the comprehensive plan states that effective and comprehensive land use planning efforts recognize the importance of supporting inclusive, creative, and innovative site design and development principles so as to maximize the long-term sustainability, economic opportunity, and quality of life within the township. And the goals are also listed there on page 3 to create and update existing comprehensive plan that results in the protection and enhancement of the public health, safety, welfare, and morals through the examination of the nature and the location of the existing and future land use patterns and their relationship to the community. To encourage flexible, innovative, and creative development approaches in order to maximize the benefit derived from existing and proposed transportation and infrastructure investments and resources leveraged by local jurisdictions. To plan for and accommodate mixed-use, walkable development that encourages a blending of a variety of commercial and residential uses and housing product types. To encourage the use of creative site design that fosters and facilitates infill development. To continue patterns of high-quality residential growth consistent with the character of the township. And to encourage continued economic development that reinforces and enhances the township's role as a regional employment and commerce center within the greater Cincinnati metropolitan area by facilitating land uses supportive and conducive to job growth and economic opportunity. I'll pause here for a moment in the slide presentation. So this is the subject property around 2012 from the aerial imagery that we have. And you can see how the property lay. This was also included with the applicant's enclosures, some similar imagery. This is the property with the topography overlay in 2022. You can see the before and after here. So there are a number of buildings that you can see were built in the 10-year period there. And again, most of those were done through the agricultural exemption process. And I'll come back to that potentially here in a few moments. So with the relationship to the Union Township zoning resolution, we're looking again at sections 680 through 687 with PD district's purpose in 680 to provide sites for business or mixed business residential developments at appropriate locations in relation to existing and potential land uses, to afford attractive setting for developments and to harmonize proposed developments and surrounding land uses. Section 681, we have a conflict between PD regulations and approved PD plan. Other sections of the resolution, the PD regulations and approved plan shall prevail. Section 682, land use for any property in the PD district shall be consistent with the use, design, and details contained in the approved PD plan for that property and any conditions of approval. Other applicable regulations for this resolution, such as nuisance regulations, shall also apply. And allowed uses include those stated in the B1 and M1 district or substantially similar uses as determined by the Zoning Commissioner Board of Trustees. Section 683 outlines the procedure to rezone the property and references Ohio Revised Code 519 in terms of the process. Section 684 lays out the P requirements and cross-references Article 11, Section 1131 regarding site plan review, and then outlines a few other items that need to be included as far as the PD plan requirements, which includes landscaping, as far as several items under number 3, 684. Supplemental provisions are included in section 687 and address a number of topics: signage, parking, building lot coverage, building separation, and so forth. In terms of the staff review and analysis, the proposed uses outlined in the applicant's submittal are consistent with those found as permitted or conditional uses for the estate residential district. And what that means is that some of those uses, like the landscaping uses and the nursery uses, are considered conditional uses within the estate residential area. It's not a permitted use. Some of the uses are considered permitted uses, for example, the agricultural use or residential use. So they are consistent in that they are listed as one of those two categories in terms of what the applicant is proposing to do, with the possible exception of the storage use, if that would involve commercial storage versus personal storage, or storage related to permitted uses that are on the property. Since the applicant's intent is to utilize this property a number of ways, the PD Plan Development District would allow for the enhanced design flexibility and allows for the establishment of transitional uses such as those described in the applicant's submittal. And I referenced the applicant's statements, plans, and other application enclosures for more information regarding this request. Although it is evident that the applicant has made substantial investment in the property since it's been acquired, it does not appear that the applicant is proposing to make substantive additional changes to the existing buildings, landscaping, parking, or impervious surfaces at this time, as far as staff could see from the proposed application submittal. So effectively, what one sees is what one gets along with the described aforementioned uses. As things currently stand, the proposed landscaping and buffer yard areas would not be sufficient to meet the terms set forth in Article 6, Section 684, Item 3 of the zoning resolution, particularly where those impervious surfaces and/or building encroachments, for example, Building I on the south side of the property or Building B that encroaches on, from the township line there into Anderson Township, but where there was also a similar scenario happening in 2012, just the building was positioned differently. Essentially, there are areas where the buffer yards cannot be sufficient, where there are impervious surfaces or structures, or cannot respect that 20-foot setback. However, it does seem possible that some proposed landscaping and buffer areas could be enhanced in places on the property to assist in the transition from this property to the neighboring properties. As of staff's most recent inspections of this property, which were on April 14th, staff noted that the buildings on the property in Union Township are being used in a manner that is consistent with the applicant's statements, plans, and other applications and closures, except for Building B, which is partly in Anderson Township and is occupied by a company called Televac Environmental. That was the only building that we did not get inside, but a portion of that building, again, is in Anderson Township, probably about half of it. Building G houses chickens. Buildings C and F house two different landscaping companies. 3 buildings had personal storage, which were buildings H, K, and L, and the others were vacant but were noted to be intended for agricultural uses when we met with Mr. Evans. The unconventional, original manners in which many of the improvements on the property have occurred, some of their more recent noted uses, and the intensity of the buildings and impervious surface areas are what differentiate this property from the neighboring residential properties the most and raise compatibility issues and concerns. At present, the current remaining technical questions and issues are set forth in the recommended modification section of this report, which I will come to here in a few moments. In accordance with sections 680 to 687 of the zoning resolution, and also from Article 6, and also Article 4, Section 410 of the zoning resolution, the zoning commission's role in this process is either to enter a motion to recommend approval with some modifications, or denial of the applicant's request to rezone the subject property as submitted. So here is the subject property with the buildings labeled as and in the case of A, the site labeled. The building that you see here in the 2022 aerial is no longer there at Site A. So that is just an empty site at this point, where on the plan is indicated approximately where the dumpsters were to be located. This is the applicant's plan, which essentially just matches what's there. This is the applicant's proposed landscaping plan, which you can see, again, is what is on the property, is what it looks like. In terms of the pictures from the staff inspection and meeting from Mr. Evans, the zoning inspector, myself, and our intern and I all met with the property owner to take these pictures and to look into the buildings, with the exception of the one building I noted earlier. So this is looking from northwest to north from Site A towards the house that's being built, which is behind that truck area where you see the dirt mound there in the background. And that house that is being built, I believe, is for one of the sons of Mr. Evans. This is looking northwest towards Building B, which is where Televac is located. The front part of that building is in the township. The back part of that building is in Anderson Township. You can see one of the adjoining residences there to the right. This picture is looking to the southwest. Buildings B and E are on the right. Buildings C and D are on the left. C is one of the ones that houses one of the landscaping companies. D was mostly empty. The buildings that are E are in Anderson Township. And so the essentially latter part of what you see in the first building on the right is where the Anderson Township line begins, and it kind of cuts over to where Building D is, which is right here. So that line kind of cuts through here like that. This is looking at Building C, where American Landscapes, I think is the name of the company, is located. And there's parking around the perimeter of that building, and that was for that company, is my understanding. This is looking east towards Building G. This is the building that houses the chickens. Oops. This is looking towards C on the left and G on the right. And you can also see the house being built on the adjoining property there in the background. This is looking northwest towards buildings D, which is to the left, E, B, and C. This is looking southeast towards D, which is to the left, F, I, which is up on the hill. That's the one that's the closest to the property line. I think it's within less than 10 feet off the southern property line. And building J is in the background there. This is looking from southeast to south towards buildings F and I. F being the building closer to you, I being the one on the hill. This is looking south at building F. So this is where one of the other dumpsters is located. The other dumpster that we saw was located in front of building C. And we have a outside storage trailer also located in this area. This is looking south towards building I and the pond. This is looking southeast towards building J. This is looking towards the east with building J on the right, K in the middle, and H on the left. And this is looking northeast towards H. This is looking northwest down the access drive that goes up the hill along the property line. Site's on the left, and you can see some of the landscaping that's been put there. Landscaping has been put in a few areas, but not something, again, that would match the zoning resolution. As far as the recommended modifications, the applicant would need to address any concerns from related other agencies and departments, including the county engineer, county soil and water district, building department, Union Township Fire Department, and/or other regulatory agencies having jurisdiction over the proposed development prior to any final township action. The applicant would need to provide complete zoning applications and submit suitable corresponding site plans with measurements, setbacks, uses, etc. for all the structures on the property that are in Union Township so that all the buildings could become permitted and legally compliant. Each building use would need to be consistent with any zoning authorizations by the township, and this is an item that could be addressed administratively by staff. We have a statement here, no additional structures could be placed on this property without a major amendment process, and no changes to the uses of approved structures could occur without an amendment process. So this would essentially allow us to get all the buildings permitted and have uses assigned to them. The applicant should clarify that the indoor storage uses on the property are intended to be for personal storage of a non-commercial nature only, unless the storage would be related to an otherwise approved use, which in this case would be potentially limited to landscaping uses, agricultural uses, nursery uses, and/or residential uses occurring on the subject property if the rezone would gain approval. The applicant would need to provide additional details for the proposed landscaping plan and acknowledge enhanced plantings between the subject property, any parking that's required, and adjacent residential areas. All landscaping buffers should be marked as preservation areas, and any vegetation disturbed should be repaired, supplemented, or replaced. Proposed dumpster locations would need to be moved to one or more other areas of the site where they are less visible to the adjoining properties, with adequate screening to be provided where applicable. So staff was not in agreement that the location shown at Site A would be the best place for those dumpsters, and that's not where they're shown now, and it wouldn't even probably be convenient for the users of the property if they were to stay there. A signage plan would ultimately need to be submitted if applicable, and for any signage, all freestanding signage would be limited to monument signage capped at a height of no more than 5 feet. A photometric plan or lighting plan would need to be provided, as one has not been provided at this time. Any and all lighting would need to be downward directed and of sufficient intensity to illuminate without projecting onto residential property. Details and specs of the proposed lighting would be necessary. However, this is an item that could be addressed administratively by staff. The applicant would need to provide anticipated average daily traffic volumes to help make final access and parking determinations. All proposed parking and loading spaces determined necessary would need to be striped and signed accordingly. Similarly, any required driveway aisles would need to be striped and/or have arrows for one-way access drive areas to direct traffic in a proper manner. The applicant should get the northeast corner of the property surveyed to determine if there is in fact a driveway encroachment onto the neighboring property. If an encroachment is identified as the current plans from the applicant indicate, then the encroachment issues would need to be addressed with the neighboring property owner. And then as of April 17th, 2023, the other items that needed to remain to be addressed were referenced here. A lot of these are pretty minor. North area orientation needs to be corrected, site address needs to be corrected, bearings and distances need to be checked on the parcel. Need to acknowledge the name of the nearest street intersection, and the proposed screening for the dumpsters would need to be identified and consistent with the Union Township zoning resolution. With that, that concludes my report. Are there any questions that you have for me?
No, I have.
I don't have it.
Not right now. Then I'll open the floor to the applicant or his representative.
Thank you very much. First of all, I just want to make sure procedurally on an issue, on the other applicant, they talked about the date of...
I'm sorry, could you please identify yourself?
I'm sorry, I'm Christopher Finney, Finney with Finney Law Firm. My address is 4270 Ivy Point Boulevard, Suite 225 over in Ivy Point subdivision.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank you all for your time. I also want to thank Mr. McCormick for, I think, working through the issues on this with us. It was an unusual application, and he's very professional. You all should be complimented for what he does. I want to make sure I recognize Jessica Gibson from my office, and Charlie Severe, who also helped out a great deal in the presentation tonight. So, but your staff has been fantastic. I want to make sure you all hear that. It is an unusual application, first of all. As I think staff has indicated, this area it's nothing contrary to planning here, so it's just really in your discretion as to how to proceed. But we do have a situation where the buildings are already built, and they've been there for, a decade or some of them. And in fact, some of the buildings pre-existed the 2012 purchase of the property by my client. There's been an implication from the opposition that's been filed that somehow that was by design, that my client invested back here millions of dollars with the intent of evading zoning. It's just not true. He went in and had conversations, and you'll hear from him tonight. You can question about it. But he went in and talked to the township about what his intentions were. They indicated that he would fit with under agricultural, and he applied with that. One of the applications does talk about cattle and hay, I think.
It is a little difficult to understand.
Which one do you want me to? Either
Yeah,
one?
the podium mic should be working, but I don't think it is.
I've never been accused of not projecting enough before.
There we go.
Is that better?
Yes, please, thank you. Thank you.
A star here with my microphone. I get to do that. Is that better now? Can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. This is an unusual application that the buildings are existing. As I said, my client has been accused by Mr. Gordon, who's here, and has filed a 242-page opposition to this, of intentionally going in and shoehorning this in, misleading the township about the zoning. It's just not true. He went in and consulted them and was told that this would fit, the uses that he intended would fit under agricultural, and you can ask him about that tonight. One of the applications does talk about hay and cattle, but the others don't mention it, just as agricultural, because that's what my client was told it would be. Clearly it's not, and I'm not suggesting that the township's in error for citing this, but that's how we got ourselves into this situation. At one point in time, there was a BMW repair shop and I think some more intense uses, but they're no longer there. And we're going to talk specifically about all this, so I'm very clear about that. But the uses that we desire to have permitted by the PD, which would be the only uses that we would employ on the Union Township portion of the property, with one exception, which is the Televac building, and you all are going to have to tell us how you want to handle that, are agricultural, landscaping, which is not retail nurseries. These are people who basically come in the morning, get their lawn, they keep the lawnmowers inside, they keep the trailers inside so they don't rust. They come in the morning. In fact, one of the landscapers is going to talk about the guys carpool to the sites. There's not even that much traffic. And then they take the trucks out, work in the field, and then come back at night. Those are two landscaping companies that are on the site. In addition to that, on the Union Township portion, a very small, well, less than half of the one building is occupied by Televac. Televac has very sophisticated trucks that have electronic equipment that scope out, just look at sewer lines for the utility companies and for municipalities. I actually have represented them, so I know a lot about Televac. And then in some cases, they used to do a lot of remedial. I think they still do some vacuuming, Televac, and some sewer line repair work. But they send, again, people come in the morning, they keep their trucks inside because they're very expensive, sophisticated equipment, and then they take them to the sites during the day, and they're gone. One of the things that's important, they talked about lighting and signage. I want to talk about those two things quickly. There is virtually no signage on this site. The buildings say B, C, D, E, F, and that's it. I know Televac has a small sign inside in a window, and that's it. There's no signage, and there's minimal lighting. There is some, obviously, but it's minimal lighting because there is no activity, virtually no activity on this site at night. I'm not saying there's none. You might come and go and pick stuff from the barns or something, but it's very unusual. So the uses would be agricultural, which we have the chickens there, that sort of thing. We might put some more sheep on the property, or sheep, there's sheep on the adjoining property. The two landscape companies, the existing one, less than one half of a building that is used by Televac, and then internal storage for the personal use. And you'll see that the owner's two sons have homes. One is built at the top of the hill, and he has sheep. He has many as 12 to 15 sheep on there at one point. And the other son is building, investing in the township, putting his residence in the township, a new house at the bottom of the hill, and you'll see that tonight as well. So Mr. Evans, Mount Carmel Farms has done significant improvements on the site, including water detention, putting in water lines as well as fire hydrants, and detention on the site, including significant, have you all been back there? Because it's a beautiful development, it's amazing. The buildings themselves are absolutely gorgeous, red barns, but they have local stone that were just taken from the site on these foundations. One of them goes up 10 or 12 feet, I think. But it's absolutely gorgeous. And then the roadways are immaculate, very well. You know, it's not gravel, it's not kicking up a lot of dirt, but paved roadways back into there. It's very, very nice. Significant investment in the township. But again, the buildings are built. It's a difficult situation because of that. My client believes in good faith. He built those with compliance with all codes. The opponent believes otherwise, but you can question my client about that. All of the conditions that the township staff has suggested, which would include all of the proper permits. So once we get zoning, we're not done. We got to go back and get building permits. We got to get soil and water permits. We got to get detention. All of those things will be properly permitted. There's no intention to avoid that. There's also a setback issue on the north side, you say, of the property? South side of the property, for one of the buildings, and we will cure that or we'll remove the building. So our intention is to acquire an easement, acquire more property. You all grant a variance or the building is moved from that site. So with that, I'd like to go through our presentation and kind of review what we have. First of all, it's a confusing site. Can you go to, I think it was like the second map on your presentation, Mark, where it shows the county line real quick? That one's pretty good. So I don't know if my pointer's not going to work on that one. Can you all see this screen if I use my pointer on that?
Yes.
But this is kind of tricky. First of all, the opponent talks about a gutter company and certain other uses on the property, and he's talking about an area of Anderson Township, Hamilton County, that's zoned industrial. So that's all of this property on this side of the line. This building, maybe this parking at least, and maybe a tiny piece of this building. And we estimate, Mr. McCormick said about half, we estimate about 2/3 of this building is in Anderson Township where the Televac operations are. The remainder of this site is what would be subject to the PUD in Clermont County, Union Township. Okay? One or two of those buildings, I believe, were existing, and the owners simply fixed them up. So they pre-exist. There also have been previous to 2012, when my client acquired the property, landscaping companies that were on part of this property that came from Mrs. Bickle. Mr. Bickle had died. There was a at least one landscaping company, and we think prior landscaping uses there on the assemblage, and you'll see those buildings tonight when we go through it. So I wanted to be clear about a couple of those things on the front end. So if you want to go ahead to our presentation, Mr. McCormick, I appreciate it. Thank you. Well, we were there. Yep. So this is the site. These are the buildings that are in question. This is an adjoining, I think, barn of a neighbor and maybe a residence of a neighbor on that side. And we're going to go through some of the surrounding properties and issues as we go forward. So you can go ahead, Mr. McCormick. So the total site, which includes the Hamilton County portion, is 12.428 acres of land. 11.7 of that's in Union Township and currently zoned as a state residential. 0.1717 is in Anderson Township, currently zoned as industrial. And so the uses down here that the opponent vociferously complains about in his objections have nothing to do, from our perspective, on your decisions tonight. They're perfectly legal. They're not within your jurisdiction, and they're allowed. Two of the buildings are entirely in Anderson Township. Two are partially in both townships, and that one is this one, and it may be this one right here. We're not certain about that. Your map seems to show that only the parking area is in Anderson Township, but the line, as was said, kind of goes this way, and this location may clip a portion of the corner of this building. And 7 are entirely in Union Township. Go ahead. The proposed uses are landscaping. We have 2 landscaping companies there at present. One is called Must Landscaping. The other one is American Landscaping. Is that right? And they will each have 5 to 10 employees. I believe the testimony will show that they will each have 5 to 10 employees that will come each morning. They pick up the trucks of the landscaping company, lawnmowers, small trailers with lawnmowers and such on the back. They leave for the day. There's very little activity there during the day. And then they come back at night. They park the trucks inside. I talked to Mr. Musk tonight. All of his trucks are parked inside, but he has one truck and a small trailer one pickup truck and a small trailer that's in front of one of the buildings right now. So that would be
Are they
typical.
doing snow removal in the winter?
Please?
Are they doing snow removal?
I know
in the
Mr.
winter?
Musk is not. I asked him that. So he's out of business in January, works a little bit in December, and starts up again in late February. So they take off 2 months, so they're really working 10 months a year. American?
We do a little bit.
A little bit of snow plowing. What's that?
We do residential mostly, so we don't store salt, but we do have plow.
That could change the day and the night thing.
Yep. You know what? I was telling Mr. Evans that when I was 17 years old, I bought a Jeep. Had no money, so it had no roll bar. You can imagine that. I bought a Jeep with no roll bar back in the day. no radio and no center console, but it has a snowplow on it. 1977, 1978, I plowed snow, so I know about
You
that.
go
And
when the snow goes.
I would always go out about 4 in the morning. I'd have to get up early to get those lots cleared, so that could affect that a little bit, yep.
Thank you for answering.
No, there's no question about that. But anyway, landscaping uses, there's currently 2 landscaping companies on there. Agricultural uses, which my client intends to expand on the site. There's currently one of the buildings has chickens in it. Nursery, he does already have some trees he plants and has used for lumber. He may has the trees he's currently growing on there, he intends to take a tree hoe, or whatever they call that, and pull them out and actually plant them on people's properties. And potentially residential uses, although the 2 residences that are there are not currently part of the PUD that's before you. Additional indoor storage uses for the property owner, and then the commercial uses would continue in Anderson Township. And like I say, we'd need to talk about that building where Televac is. We'd like to be able to continue that use, which is partly in Union Township, mostly, we believe, in Anderson Township. Go ahead, next slide. So this is the site. This, again, is the county line. These buildings are entirely and this corner is entirely in Anderson Township, Hamilton County. We think 2/3, maybe a little bit more, of the Televac building is in Anderson Township. My client owns or controls approximately 800 acres in this area, including this property here and this property here. Up here, one of his son's homes is. You'll see this road, which does encroach to some extent on the neighbor's property. We believe we need an accurate survey of that. And the one son, I believe the older son, lives here. And then the younger son, Reese, who's here tonight, is building a house right now in this location. So we will address, just like this setback issue I talked about previously, you can make a condition of the approval that we will properly address the setback issues and the encroachment issues. We'll either buy the land, buy an easement, or move the driveway as appropriate, but we don't want to encroach on anyone else's property. I think that came about, at least by this non-survey plat that we have, came to our attention as a result of this application. So we want to address that. The primary opponent, I believe, is in this area, a fellow by the name, I think, of Jason Gordon. There's somebody named Gratch, who I think is here. And then Mr. Wesley is here, and Mr. and Mrs. Height are up here. Again, my client controls and owns all of this property on this side of the property, and other property in the area. So with that, we kind of have a drone flyover for you to show you the entranceway, which I talked about. The property's beautiful. Like I say, if you haven't seen it, I'd recommend that you do. You're welcome to go back there, as we have with the township staff. It's absolutely amazing what has been built there, and how nice it is and how nicely it's maintained, including landscaping, nicely paved roads, proper addressing of drainage. Like I say, generous landscaping there, and beautiful buildings with stone foundations. Do you have that, Mr. McCormick? There we go. So you'll see a detention pond there on the left, entrance drive, one of the entrance ways, entrance drive coming in. Lots of greenery, beautiful landscaping, beautiful paving. This is not a rundown area. And the buildings themselves are consistent in their architecture. They're beautiful. You will see some photos later of showing the stone foundations, the stone, I don't even, beyond foundations, but the stone first level of one of the buildings. It's just stunning to see. It looks to me like a Lexington horse farm. Very nice. There's another detention pond. On the left here, you'll see the house that's under construction by Reese Evans and his girlfriend, sorry, by Reese anyway. And the other house is up that road on the top of the hill. By the way, there was a mention in the opposition that we illegally, he says this over and over, we illegally cleared trees and we illegally built a roadway. None of those things are true to my knowledge. I don't think you need on your property a permit to clear your trees, and nor is there one for the roadway. In terms of the earth movement, my understanding it was mostly contained to the site and was fairly minor, but again, we'll get everything permitted as would have been required if we did not know this property was agricultural at the time. Go ahead. Oh, was that the end of the drone? Okay. This is an old picture that shows the condition of the property when purchased from the Bickles. I believe this is actually turned the other way, so the Hamilton County portion is on the left and the Clermont County portion is on the right. Two or three of these buildings were retained. There was a landscaping business here. Mr. Bickle actually had a construction business on here where my understanding is he built gas stations, and this was Mr. Bickle's brother, I think, and therefore the brother-in-law of the woman who sold it to my client. I think that's what I said. So this is flip of what the other one was. It used to be, the other one had Hamilton County on the left. This one has Clermont County on the left and Hamilton County on the right. Did I say that right? Hamilton?
I don't think so. The right side of this image is
Clermont County. So anyway, some of these buildings are still there, and what happened was Mr. Evans, Mount Carmel, just fixed them up to be very nice. These were not in as good condition nearly as they are today. The site was filled, as you can see, with trucks, maintenance vehicles, construction vehicles, and the buildings were not as attractive and as well maintained. The site was not as attractive and as well maintained as it is today. The auditor's value at the time of the purchase was $171,000, purchased on May the 30th of 2012 from Janet Bickle. The change is dramatic. Go ahead to the next slide. The next slide shows the current configuration of the property, which is now 10 times the value by the Clermont County auditor at $1.759 million. 8 new or renovated bright red and white barns, 3 existing buildings. Water was brought to the property, including fire hydrants. Upgraded electric service was brought onto the property. As you can see, it's beautiful, green. The pavement is well maintained. It's drained properly. The landscaping is gorgeous. It's extremely well done. It's also relatively well shielded from at least the properties on the right-hand side, which I believe would be the east on the property. No, that's not correct. I guess that's the south, maybe, side of the property. And again, the properties on the bottom side of this are Hamilton County now, except for the Televac building, which is the line somehow runs through that, and maybe that other building, there's a small piece of that that's in Hamilton County, the rest are Clermont County. You can go ahead and go forward. This is another view from a different angle. So this is from the top of the hill. Again, this is essentially the view. This is a drone view higher, but this view would be enjoyed almost exclusively by Mr. Evans' son, who lives in the house at the top of the hill where he does sheep farming and just resides at the house. And again, if you look at the top of this photo, you will see the far more industrial uses that surround this property in Anderson Township. So this notion that these quasi-agricultural uses such as landscaping companies are foreign or intrusive into this area, it's not true. When you drive through this area down on Mount Carmel Road and the environs, there is much more heavy commercial and industrial development in other areas. It's not nearly as picturesque as this. And again, on the right-hand side, you'll see the cleared area of land, which will be green a year from now, but that is Reese Evans' home that he is constructing there. And it looks like it has a fairly large footprint, but my understanding is it's a single-story ranch home, so it's got a little bit bigger footprint than a typical home would have. And again, a large drainage pond to the right-hand side, gorgeous paved roads, not gravel, that surround and approach the property. It's a barn aesthetic that suits the countryside more than the industrial developments that are just next door on this property. Next photo. The same, if you look in the right-hand side of this photo, this is I think the same entrance maybe that we had coming in, I'm not sure, but you see, large, relatively unattractive compared to this idyllic Red Barn area, industrial area that immediately adjoins the subject property. Next. Again, industrial as far as the eye can see on the right-hand side, and then this development on the left-hand side. This is the house of one of Mr. Evans' sons. It's at the top of the hill where he actually has cleared this, made it much, much nicer, of a lot of honeysuckle, and made it, I think, restored the house. And this is where they have sheep up there, making it a beautiful, nice sort of country scene at the top of the hill. And I believe the private drive on the left of that photo is one of that the applicant is really upset about because he says it's an illegal pavement. I don't know what illegal pavement is. I don't think it is legal, but in any event, if the zoning is granted, we will go get permits, building permits for all of this. That building, that roadway up the hill is not used by the tenants of this development, just by his family, which would be Mr. Evans' two sons. You can go ahead to the next one. So again, that's the hill, that's the drive that leads up that hill, and essentially the access to these properties is not through that. We're more than willing to concede to that. And again, the building on the right-hand side, the far right of that photo, is a barn. We're not objecting to it in any way. It's very nice. Of one of the neighbors, and I believe his residence is maybe on the other side of that pond there, through much vegetation. So he would really see one of those barns, and probably the one that does not comply with the setback requirements that we would still need to address. So again, there's very little nighttime presence here. If none, it may occur, as Mr. Toff points out, if there's snow plowing, because I did that. You're bringing me back to my youth. It was no fun, I can tell you that. But that's how I got through. Paid my way through college in part with that Jeep, so it was good for that. But there really is very little nighttime traffic here. There've been discussions about requiring the dumpsters to be in another location. That and other things, we are glad to work with the township staff to make them and or the neighbors happy about that. So the landscapers come at the beginning of the day. They're mostly gone during the day. They come at the end of the day to pick up their cars, put the equipment back in the storage buildings or the barns, and leave. The next photo, I believe, is in the foreground. You see a Reese's house that's going up, and another angle, and again, that roadway that goes to the top of the hill. As you can see, it's very difficult to see the house of the neighbor over there, so it's relatively secluded on that side. Then I'm going to go walk you through just plats that show you each of these buildings and what their current utilization is. I'll try to do this quickly for you. The first one is the Televac building. There's Reese's house. I'm sorry, we got to get past that one. So there's Reese's house. The first one, so shown in yellow for each of these, we kind of tried to highlight each of the buildings. This one, it's hard to see, but the county line runs right there through the part of that building. The majority, we believe, of it being in Hamilton County, Anderson Township. Again, Televac, to my understanding, puts these very expensive vehicles inside, high-tech vehicles inside at night. The cars come during the day. They pick up the vehicles in the morning, leave, and come back in the evening. I don't think there's a lot of traffic or exterior storage at this site at all. Next. These are some visuals of the Televac building that's in question. As you can see, I said the signage, they have a little B on these buildings, and that's actually the sign for Televac that they put in a window there, that, at least in that photo, I can hardly see. That's the extent of the signage. And you can see there's, in terms of exterior lighting, I don't even know if there is any there, maybe on the front porch or something. I guess above each one of the garage doors, looks like there's a light fixture, just very minor. And that kind of parking of one vehicle out front would be typical of what you would see. There was another photo that showed about a dozen vehicles of various workers who'd left them there during the day. That would be typical also of what you would see there. You can keep going. This is another photo of the Televac building. So it's got a little bump out building in the front, which I think is for their office uses, and then they have the storage in that larger building that's mostly in Anderson Township, Hamilton County. Next. This would all be in Hamilton County, the back of the building. Again, this corner would likely be in Hamilton County. This is one portion of that. This next building is the first one we have that's entirely Building C in the Union Township. That one is rented to Dave Iles' Landscaping, American Landscaping, for primarily the indoor storage there. We think they have about 10 cars that come in and out during the day, meaning come in at the beginning of the day and leave at the end of the day. Mr. Iles can confirm those numbers and the traffic patterns there. And then we have a few more photos of that site with, again, 1 or 2 cars shown outside in each of those. Minimal outdoor storage. The next building is here. That is Building D. And we'll show you some photos. That's currently vacant, and we'll show you some photos of that. Again, well, hold on, go back to that prior photo. You'll see nice drainage there in the parking lot, nice paved areas. This site is extremely well maintained. Surprisingly, when you go to it, it stands out for the quality of construction and the maintenance of the site. Keep going. The next building is a small building that's entirely in Hamilton County, Anderson Township. Building E, that is the gutter guy, or was. He has that, and then one bay of this building that's also in Anderson Township, Hamilton County. And the opponent makes a big deal out of that in his opposition letter. It's not in Union Township in any way, shape, or form. That use, the gutter guy, is not in any way, shape, or form doing anything in Clermont County except, I guess, driving through the parking area, or the driveway area of this site. And I believe the rest of that building is either for on-site storage for the owner or vacant, meaning this next building down here. This one is, I think, occupied by the guy who has a gutter company. Building E. These are some photos of that. That's more of a block building, painted red. Was that one of the original buildings that was there when you bought it? Fixed it up, painted it up. Building E1 is the one I was referring to, that he has one bay here, and the remainder of this building is for our storage of various personal property of the Evans family or of Mount Carmel Farms, LLC. More photos of that building. The next building, I believe this is Must Landscaping here, and he's here tonight to answer any questions about his operations. I think what he told me, he has maybe 8 people come, some of them carpool, so there's 5 vehicles coming in a day. They go out in trucks, I think 3 per truck, so they take about 4 or 5 trucks out, and they come back at the end of the day. There's no evening activity, there's no snow plowing or other evening maintenance by that company, to my understanding. And they only operate about 10 months a year for that one. The The next building, there's some photos of that, and you'll see there is some parking there when they're on. There's a little, go back to that photo, there's a little overhang with some trailers that looks very much like an agricultural use, the kind of stuff you'd have on a farm or something, just some small trailers for their landscaping, transportation equipment. The next building, Building G, is where the chickens are currently maintained. This is where the BMW repair shop was when the lawsuit was brought. Sometime after that, my client vacated them from the site and converted that to a pure agricultural use, which is what it is today and will remain if this application is granted. Some photos of that. Again, this is a gorgeous, hold on, stop at that photo. Just look at that stone foundation. That's, again, stone that's taken from this site. Gorgeous and consistent construction throughout this site of these buildings. Like I say, it looks like a Lexington horse farm, something somebody put a lot of thought, effort in. You also see appropriate storm catch basin there and drainage. This site is on a hill for some of the properties, but extremely well constructed, very well maintained, and he's got some landscaping here. It's taken in the wintertime, but there's greenery that accents the building. It's done very nicely. Some architectural detail on here. This is not just slapdash construction. It's done very thoughtfully and very well.
I'm sorry, what building letter is this?
That is,
G.
Is that G as in girl?
Yep.
Can you go back to that slide showing the location of that building
G.
for him? Yeah, Building G, but go back to the one showing because that doesn't mean anything to me, but it's,
Oh,
it's
all right.
this one that's closest to that property line over there,
All right,
G. Okay,
thank you.
no problem. The next one is Building H. This is the largest, I think, of the buildings. And this is currently, has nothing but a family personal property in there, and will be maintained that way, or for the other uses, agricultural or landscaping on that site. We'll show you some exterior photos of that. Again, beautiful buildings, nice architectural detail, extremely well maintained, both in terms of the landscaping, the site, and the building itself. Beautiful construction. Here's on a hillside. Very nice detail, very consistent construction. The next building is the one, now that line is not the property line, that line is the setback line, so that shows the setback violation that, again, we would either ask for a variance for, or we will cure that in another way if our plan is approved. That's Building I, Mr. Lewis.
And what's in building I currently?
Currently, that's vacant. Nothing is in that building. And again, the township can confirm all this, and they went through at the time these uses were employed.
Yeah, it's empty. Tractor storage.
So we'll show you some more photos of that building. Again, beautiful rock detail, nice paved areas, there's no gravel, landscaping, proper drainage for these sites. Our opponent talks about this as an industrial site. There's an industrial park that's built next to him. And yes, some of the uses were of that type previously. There's nothing like that now. And everything there is either landscaping, except for the Televac building in Union Township. The only utilizations, which is really, Televac really very much a high-tech company. The only utilization is for landscaping companies or personal storage back there or agricultural. The next building is Building J, and this one is currently vacant as well. Township want to confirm that?
I have empty.
And we can go through some photos of that. Again, beautiful rock formations around there. Incredible construction, very nice site work, nothing slapdash. You know, our opponent wants to talk about how terrible this looks, what terrible construction it is. It's just not true. And finally, buildings K and L, and I'm not sure why we call that two buildings. but I think we do. And this one is the one that has just a fantastic stone, really striking stone foundation to it. And that is currently used for personal storage for the owner and his family. You can go ahead forward. This shows one of the views of that on the uphill side of that. This is that incredible stone foundation with these tremendous garage door or a barn door kind of entrances to them, along with a stone retaining wall there. So this one is up on the hill, and a lot of thought had to be given to the site development of that. Minimal outdoor storage, landscaping around there. This is that this very striking stone foundation that you see that adds, really complements the township, is far superior to the surrounding uses in the industrial parks that surround this property. As you'll see, landscaping, we have a few slides of that for you, and we're willing to, if the township, if the board desires, if the trustees desires to put in more landscaping and buffer, if that's helpful. There's a lot of trees. There's berming and shielding as a result of that. I think you saw the one property line to the right-hand side had very significant trees. You can't really see the neighbor's property. And then I'm open to I and my client are open to any questions that you may have.
Any member of the commission have a question for Mr. Finney at this point?
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Lewis.
Mr. Finney, a statement of proposed use was submitted, and in that statement, said several of the buildings are already leased to tenants that have been there over 10 years who use the building for landscaping storage. Mount Carmel Farms intends to continue those leases. There's a bit more, but at that time, that's when the application for the agricultural exemption to the buildings were being acquired. So were the buildings then constructed with the agricultural exemption of no building permit being required, and then immediately occupied by landscaping, which is non-agricultural?
Essentially, yes. We were under the understanding that the agricultural uses were permitted in the agricultural zone.
You were under the impression that
The
landscaping was permitted
uses,
in
landscaping uses
agriculture?
were permitted in the agricultural zone, yes.
But that's not correct, it's my understanding, but.
No,
I mean,
no,
it's
no,
my
no, we
understanding.
accept that, and the township has told us that. We're not in this hearing
All right.
contesting that. We're saying a mistake,
I understand.
passive tense, a mistake was made. We made a mistake. The mistake was made, the mistake was ours. I'm not saying how it was induced. We talked to the township, we were told that those uses were permitted. It turns out that they are not. We're not contesting that. We agree that the PUD is required to permit the continuation of those uses. There's no question about that. And the uses that did not comply, which would be the BMW repair shop, we told them to leave. We said, once we became aware of this, we said, we're not interested in continuing that utilization. So they're gone, and they will not be coming back. But the two landscaping companies are going to be here tonight to talk to you, and one of the things they're going to tell you is it's very hard to find places for them to do their business. They really appreciate the quality and type of facility we have here, and they would like to continue to employ their people and continue their businesses in those locations. That's really important to them. And those are the only, other than the televac issue, the only uses that are not agricultural and personal storage. It's really the only business use that we're asking to be allowed on the site.
And currently in the ER zone, landscaping uses require a 100-foot setback. One of your landscape buildings is well within the 100. The other one's a little shy of the 100. We'll have to address that at some point. All right, I don't have any further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Anyone else?
How
Mr.
long was
Tall?
the mechanics there before Union Township showed up in October? 5 or 6 years, and then the chickens came?
And then the
Chickens
chickens
came
were put
and
in,
replaced
yeah,
the- okay.
yeah.
Chickens were there with the auto mechanic? Were they fixing the cars? The chickens were in the same building with the mechanics?
No. The mechanics were there first, and then the chickens were there.
So the mechanic went bye-bye and the chickens moved in? Okay, that's my only question.
Yeah, yeah.
Mr. Shannon, anything?
No, I don't have that.
Mr. Wayne? No, I'm good. Okay, thank you, Mr. Finney.
Thank you all. There's one other thing I do need to address. My associate points this out to me. And I started with this and I didn't finish up. When Mr. McCormick started on the other zoning matter, he talked about when the trustees would hear this matter, and I believe this will be the same May 9th date. The problem is I'm out of town that day, so we've asked to move that to the June trustees date, and that's that's a motion I think that's pending before somebody, maybe you all, on that issue, but I want to make sure I address that procedural. Did I cover it, Jessica? Good, okay. And by the way, this presentation tonight would not be possible without the assistance, the very capable assistance of my associate, Jessica Gibson, who's been wonderful. So I want to thank her. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Finney.
So this
McCoy.
hearing is, they did request, the applicant did request to defer the time, the minimum amount of time before the application moves from the zoning commission to the trustees. And by waiving that time provision, the trustees were going to schedule this to be heard at their June meeting on the 13th, which so happens to be my wedding anniversary. My wife will love the fact that I will be here that evening, I'm sure, but it is scheduled for the 13th of June to move forward to the trustees.
I kind of felt that we're having the trustee meeting too soon after the zoning commission meeting, because typically we require applicants to submit additional materials 1 week prior to the trustees meeting to hear it, and it's a short time now. But I don't have a problem.
Mr. Doug Evans, would you like to speak, sir?
Yes, sir. Thanks for having us tonight. Mark, can you go back a couple slides from his? Keep going. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Keep going, keep going, keep going. Keep going. It's kind of right before the drone one.
Before what?
Before the drone. Keep going. Oh, go one more, I think, right there. So I think to kind of understand the whole thing, you kind of need to get a little history on things, just to try to help you. The line that everybody talks about, that kind of goes across here, it runs right up the middle of the river. And I wish I had a picture to show you, but it kind of makes a little sense. And I didn't really realize a lot of that stuff when I got it. And this piece here was a Norfolk Southern Railroad, and this was all blue chip paving, which I went to school with him, and he sold that to me, and we're kind of cleaning it up a little bit too. So, you know, like Mr. Finney said, we got a pretty good piece of property there, and we're pretty selective on what we do and what things we offer. And it really has great views of the river. You can see Rob Portman's house, you can see up the river. It's probably a nice piece of property, and a lot of people have commented that. I continually get, you know, every week or two, people want to buy the thing. I've had 2 Chinese outfits that just told me to name the price. I didn't do that. I had a guy want to put a wind farm up there. I don't want to do that either, you know. I have 3 kids, and one of them, you know, I think he's, what are you, 21 now? Okay, I'm getting old, I forget. But him and his girlfriend, her dad's a architect in Clermont County, and they've been building that house themselves. And, you know, he dug the foundation, did all the gravel work, poured the concrete, did all that stuff, you know, so that's how they're going to learn. You know, and the same thing when we did these buildings, we didn't just call 1-800 build the buildings. You know, every Saturday and Sunday, my kids, you know, when they're, what, 11 and 12, 13, we're running bulldozers and doing stuff to try to help and learn the business, okay? And, you know, it's kind of helped them, and, you know, between athletics and work, you know, kind of kept them out of trouble. And I'm proud of them and their friends to always doing stuff and not get involved in drugs and not, you know, always begging for money. You know, I've never given my kid anything. I let them work for it, you know. And this whole property thing here, can you go to a slide in front of that? So, oh, right there. So if I'm standing around the river, it'd be right here, and it kind of cuts right through there. See the things right through there? So that's pretty much, everything to the right is Hampton County. And this is all zoned industry, every bit of it's zoned industry. And this is Clermont, and you guys know what your thing is. So I have issues on a lot of different things because I don't want to see the thing turn into industrial park. If I wanted an industrial park, I could have put one in right here without even asking. But I spent many days bush hogging, taking out honeysuckle, cleaning all the dead ash trees, just really improving the property. And I didn't have to do that. I could have left it the way it was, but I chose to improve it. You know, my kids have grown up with the neighbors' kids, hunting and fishing, riding some four-wheelers, and having a good time. You know, I'd rather stay here on our property than go down to Tennessee or go somewhere else. And it kind of shows, you know, in their development. But, you know, I'm trying to take a bigger view of this whole thing. And I figured when I started doing this, I wanted to kind of have a more or less a farm/maintenance area over here. And then, you know, eventually I don't really have to have this industrial. I can kind of maybe, you know, do something else and then keep the industrial stuff over on this side of the road. It's kind of like the long-term plan, but, you know, plans can change. And, you know, if, you know, I don't really want to put industrial in here, but, you know, I really want these other young men that, you know, rent from me to have a place just like I did to maybe grow their business and maybe help a little bit. And, you know, they're all working for people in Union Township and Anderson Township since we're right on the line. There's really nowhere else for them really to go. So that's the only thing we asked for was to do the PUD, do for the landscapers. But, you know, in order to see this, you almost have to come out and spend a little bit of time and look at it if you ever want to. I know we're only talking about the 12.4 acres in here, but it's really the bigger issues, the whole thing that's, you know, majority of it's Hamilton County, but then we got a whole bunch of really nice hillside that overlooks the river, and we don't want to junk it up. You know, we don't want to, you know, make it, we want to really keep it, and whether I like to move over there with my kids sometime. You know, the last thing I want to do, you know, is have something that doesn't look nice, and I don't feel proud about it. You know, so that's kind of the big picture things.
Any questions from Mr. Evans from the commission?
I don't have any.
Make sure.
Thank you, Mr. Evans.
Thank you.
If I could have Mr. Musk come up, I got to talk to him tonight a little bit and got to see what the next generation of entrepreneur looks like, and kind of inspired me a little bit. So here you go.
How you doing? I'm Griffin.
I'm sorry, your name?
Griffin Must.
Full name, please, yeah.
Griffin
Full
Must.
name?
Griffin Must.
Griffin.
I just want to thank Mr. Evans for giving me a place to continue to grow my business for you know, an affordable price. But really, when time like now, there's nowhere really else to go, and just helping me grow the business, and you know, being there for me and helping just make the township better. So.
Let me ask you a few questions. Could you bring up the buildings, and maybe he could identify the building he's in and talk about it, like you talked about how many. How many people do you have coming and going, and the times of day that they come, your evening operations, and being closed in parts of December and February and all January? Can you talk about
So
those things?
building F, I have 8 employees.
Is this your building here?
That's my building there. About 5 to 6 cars a day. They get there about 7:30, and then my 3 trucks go out.
So it looks like they don't really even drive big trucks in, they just drive sedans or SUVs?
Mhm.
Okay, go ahead.
And then they'll take my 3 trucks out to go do their work for the day.
During the night, are your
No,
trucks
during the
up
day.
inside? Are your trucks inside at night?
Yeah, everything's inside at night.
And why is that important to you to have the trucks inside?
Keep them clean, rust, and that way just keep the equipment on there at night, and you don't have to unload it and everything, and you're just ready to go for the next morning.
Okay, so they arrive at 7:30 in about 5 cars. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And then you have how many trucks they go out in then during the day?
3 go out every day, leave about 7:30.
So you have 3 or 4 people on each truck?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then, is there any traffic there during the day?
No, I'm the only one.
Do you have any retail operations where you're selling potted plants or soil or sod or peat moss or anything?
Nothing, no.
Nothing. So you don't have any operations during the day, so they leave by 8 o'clock,
7:30.
7:30, and then they come back at what time?
5:36.
And in that period, from 7:30 to 5:30, certainly there'll be maybe you. or
I'm the only
somebody
one coming in and
coming
out,
going.
generally, yep.
Okay, and no other traffic? Okay, and then they come back at 5:30, park the trucks in the garage? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Leave in their cars?
Yes, sir.
They're going by 5:30?
Yes, sir.
6 o'clock?
Yes, sir. Give or take, you
You
know.
pack up and leave?
I'll probably leave around 8 personally,
You're doing
but they're
some-
gone.
You're doing some paperwork?
Yes.
And then, other than you leaving, nighttime activity,
0.
snow plowing?
No snow plowing or anything.
Salt?
Nope.
What did you talk about, your winter hours?
Winter hours, typically we'll like start out the season mid-February, and then we'll work clear through about December. Usually don't have employees through the winter unless, you know, I need them to come in for a day, just to help with some building a truck or something. Other than that, it's really just me throughout the winter, so,
Outside lighting,
no.
you have any?
There's one, I believe it's right on the,
Above the garage door?
yeah,
Okay. You leave your garage doors closed at night?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And then when you leave at night, is there any vehicles sitting, I think.
There's one vehicle out right
Is yours
now.
the one that had the overhang on the
Yes,
right-hand
sir.
side? So you have some trailers that you try to keep out of the weather over there?
Yes.
And other than that, do you have any vehicles at night?
No.
Outside at night?
No.
Okay.
Any questions for Mr. Must?
None.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes.
Moss, appreciate it. American Landscape? If you want to take the lead, I have the same amount of questions for you. You can learn it if you can. You want to point out at least your building?
Sure, yeah. So I'm Dave Isles, American
Is
Landscapes.
that you and C?
That's me and C, yes. I'm the longtime tenant there, been there for 10 years. So I wasn't really expected to be here 10 years later, you know, I didn't see that. But I think the buildings are very beautiful, for sure. I don't think anybody can deny that. What Doug's done when he built it is pretty impressive. He's told us over the years, you know, hey, don't leave that out, try to keep it clean, and we have. I mean, we're not perfect, but we try to stay pretty clean. I'm also the biggest, we have the most cars of anybody there. Now that the BMW guys are gone, it is really quiet there during the day. We have our little bit in and out in the morning and back out in the evening. Aside from that, it's really pretty quiet, because sometimes I'll be there. We have a office in there that's probably about 15 by 15, so it's small. And I'll be there sometimes all day, sometimes just for a few hours. And usually there's nobody coming in or out. Occasionally a car here or there, so pretty quiet.
Do you do snow plowing?
We do snow. You see the snow plow sitting there. It looks like more than it is, really. We do driveways mostly, because we service mostly residential stuff. Native Shield was mentioned. That's also our company. We've got 2 vans. We acquired them a couple years ago. We do mosquito sprays through them, so that's me too, same building. And we don't store any like bulk salt like you might think you would have on a snow company. Or and when we do have snow, we take the trucks home. But so our snow operation is minimal, if that matters to you.
Are the mosquito vans parked outside at night? Is any parked outside at night?
Yeah, we have just a couple things outside because we don't fit in there completely like we used to. I try to get them all in, but usually there's 1 or 2 vans and then maybe a trailer sitting out, but I try to limit that. I mean, I'd like them all to fit, they just don't all fit in there anymore.
And lighting, how about exterior lighting?
There's some lights that are on the building, not there at night that much. I believe there's one on each side that shine down that were, I don't think they're original though. I think they were maybe added at one point to just get some more security light back there. There's a camera, we have cameras in our building, so it helps them work better. But
Okay, that's all.
Okay. Any questions?
No.
Sir,
Thank
I
you.
don't believe I've got a testimony sheet for you, so if you wouldn't,
I did one,
I've
yeah,
got one that's unsigned.
probably me. White Oak Road, Amelia.
Yeah, that's
Sorry
you.
about that. I signed it, I probably forgot to put my name on it.
If you wouldn't mind approaching and
Sure.
printing your name on that line, just so I've got it for the record. No worries. I'm glad I found the one.
It was bugging you, wasn't it?
It was bugging. No worries. All right, thanks, sir.
Thank you.
Now, this next speaker is not a tenant on site, but Jay Butcher is a landscaper in the area and is going to talk about the importance of having landscaping, storage buildings, and the use of this particular property.
Yeah, so my name is Jason Butcher. I am a fourth generation owner of Madison Tree Care and Landscaping, which is not even a mile down the road from this particular property. I do agree that it is difficult to find the space, and it's a 60-person operation that I have. And even though we have a fair amount of land, most of it is not usable, and I do like the idea of the potential to have additional space if necessary to grow on those things. On top of that, when he talked about big picture things and doing things right and having the ability, I can tell you from my personal experience that both of my kids caught their first fish in those lakes. My son killed his first turkey on that hillside. I have a mechanic with pancreatic cancer that we spend afternoons fishing in that lake just to, and these are things that are like, it's amazing to have the ability to go somewhere that's kept that nice, that accessible. When he couldn't get around well, it was somewhere I could just drive him right to and take him and set him up there. And is it directly related to the buildings at hand? Not exactly those 11 acres, but it is part of the ambiance, it is part of the access, it is part of the overall picture of what I know I was given access to. And I've always found them striking, very well kept, and I really appreciate the potential of what I may end up using as something in the future for my company, which is, you know, it's only partially landscaping, but the other side is arboriculture. So both very, very much related, both I think very important to the community. We keep a very high standard of what we do, how we do it, and make sure that we're available for, oh, we have a giant tree on our house, you know, we pay for cranes regularly, so when that happens, and you gotta call somebody and say, hey, this is on my house, you know, those cranes have to go somewhere, and if I run out of space, I wanna know that I don't have to go crazy far to deal with it again.
So you say you're within a mile of this location?
Yes, my company is, yes.
And you're familiar with the roadways and the development in the vicinity of this area?
Yep.
Is this use consistent or inconsistent with the other kinds of uses, both in the Hamilton County side and the Clermont County side in this area?
I don't know that I personally have passed a car going in or out of there. Now, I'm there during the day though, right? This isn't somewhere I'm at night or during peak hours. This is, I'm stealing lunches or on a weekend with my kid to go do something like that. So very little traffic that I've seen.
Okay, but the use itself of landscape companies,
Oh,
the
yeah,
agricultural uses,
yeah, huge.
is that consistent with what's going on in that basin?
Oh, no, that's much nicer. I consider us to have a very nice shop, and I would trade for this from an aesthetic perspective immediately. I am also very proud that like we own our own stuff and we manage and grow our own things that way, but it's not as nice as this.
So you're saying it's not consistent because it's considerably nicer than the other uses in the basin then?
Yes, for sure.
Okay. And then Mr. Evans wanted me just to ask you something about trespassing on the property. You said you had a story about that?
For sure I do. So for the maintenance and upkeep of the area, I can say that I was up with my daughter, seeing one of Doug's sons. She had a baby sheep. She wanted to see it. It was whatever, a little bonding moment. And we were leaving, and as we were passing down the lower part of Mount Carmel, Tabasco, there was a car parked where it shouldn't have been in his property, and it looked like people were dumping. So we stopped, and I said, hey, you guys got permission to be in there. That doesn't, you know, that's not typically how that land's allowed to be handled. And they said, oh, we had an emergency. So then I called Doug and said, hey, is this something that you're allowing? And he said, no, of course not. So I told him the owner's on the way, you know, do what you want. And they tried to scurry out and get around us. So like, he's not just saying that he's keeping it nice on that front. He came personally, and the two of us had to pin the car in to wait for the police, for people illegally dumping in the area. So it's not just a statement. Like, I can tell you firsthand, it was real.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Question?
Yeah,
You're in
sure.
Anderson Township, though?
What'd you say?
You're in Anderson Township?
No, I'm not in Anderson Township. I'm on just across the railroad tracks in Milford.
Okay.
So if you go down Round Bottom
Not
Road.
Union Township, though.
Union Township, the very edge, like,
Okay.
is the lines drawn, we're right.
At the end of your statement, were you suggesting that if you get additional cranes or rent cranes, you're thinking about storing them there?
Oh, I'm saying that it's very difficult to find opportunities to do anything, to find land to house your business in and have the availability.
I misunderstood. I thought you were talking about you could store your stuff there.
No, no,
Mile
no,
down
well,
the road.
no.
Okay.
No, I'm just saying the idea of changing the zoning, so like, thinking of having a business there or expanding the business to that area,
Okay,
yeah, it is hard to find.
okay. Thank you.
Yep,
Any further questions?
Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Brooks.
yeah.
We just have one more speaker. I do want to say one more thing, which is, during the township's presentation, Mr. McCormick's presentation, he talked about, obviously, any additional buildings would come back to you all. There is no plans at present to build any additional buildings on that site. The idea is just to have permitted what's there. So any additional stuff would obviously come before you, but that's not part of our plan right now. What I do want to do is just let you briefly talk to Doug's, I think, younger son, Reese, who is currently with his girlfriend. Sorry about making you a spouse there earlier. Building a house there and planting a flag here in Union Township, not in the PUD area, but showing their investment, and they're proud to have a residence right next to there. It's not like they think that it's a bad spot.
Hello, my name's Reese Evans. I'm Doug's son, building a house there. This is a place that I've grown up, riding four-wheelers, hunting, spending a bunch of time outside, just enjoying all the wildlife over there. I can't wait to I'm in the process of building a house with my girlfriend, and we can't wait to move over there because we're already there every weekend. We love spending time walking our dog over there. We have a gym that me, my girlfriend, my brother, and his girlfriend all share there, and we just love spending all the free time we can over there because it's such a beautiful piece of property. Any
Any
questions?
questions for Mr. Evans?
None.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Finney, anyone else to speak in support?
There may be other supporters, but that's the end of our formal presentation. Again, glad to answer any questions that you may have. Want to cooperate with the township and staff in this going forward.
As they come up, we'll ask them. Appreciate it. Thank you. Any others wishing to speak in support? Okay, hearing none. We're going to move to those in opposition. I believe Mr. Forbes, Mr. Jeff Forbes, you're up first, sir.
Thank you, members of the commission. My name's Jeff Forbes. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Wood and Lamping, 600 Vine Street, Cincinnati, 45202. And I'm here tonight, as you may have heard, on behalf of some of the neighboring property owners, specifically Jason Gordon, but his family also owns other property adjacent to this. There's been a lot of talk about this big 200-plus page binder that was submitted, and you all got a copy of it. I hope you've had an opportunity to review it. I thought we could go page by page through it.
It's very amusing, Mr. Forbes.
I'm not going to do that. I do want to respect your time tonight. You've gotten a lot of information from the presentation. I'm not going to go through that binder, although it is very comprehensive. It does have a lot of information in it, and I hope that you do have the opportunity to review that. But instead of going through it, what I would like to do is, I do want to mention just a couple of things about that binder. It actually tells a pretty good story. It tells a story of about 10 years of ongoing illegal activity on that property with no enforcement from the township. That binder details a private lawsuit where a judge clearly determined that these uses were illegal and that they were supposed to stop. It tells the story of the applicant not complying with that court order and being held in contempt. And it basically tells the story of a 10-year pattern of just ongoing ignoring of the zoning regulations. So that brings us to the actual application. So I'm going to spend my time, I'm going to try to be as fast as I can. Don't want to take up too much time, but I would like to focus on the actual application and a little bit about the presentation that you just saw. We heard an awful lot about how pretty these buildings are and this beautiful stone. And so I guess what I would say is if rezoning approvals were based on pretty buildings, maybe we'd be having a different conversation tonight. And in fact, if rezonings were approved based on pretty buildings, everybody would do what the applicant has done here, and that is build them before they have approval and then come back and show you how good they look to get approval. So let's talk about the application for this rezoning. You know, for 10 years, no one has thought about applying for rezoning to get these buildings permitted. It wasn't until a court found that the uses were improper, and it wasn't until the township actually issued the notice of violation. And then you got an application for rezoning. Essentially, the township told the property owner, you're not playing by the rules. And rather than play by the rules, what the applicant is doing is asking you to just throw it out and change the rule book and approve what's already there. And obviously, we're asking you not to do that. So to go through, earlier, you know, there were some questions about the actual application, the statement of proposed use, the statement of why, the necessity of why we're doing this. I just want to address a few of those items then. He does say that they want to rent this to landscapers. Landscaping uses consist of indoor landscaping equipment storage. And you saw things that said, well, there maybe be 5 cars there, 8 cars there. I was there yesterday at 11 a.m. So I was on Mr. Gordon's property, and about 11 a.m. to noon, there were dozens of cars there. I saw Rumpke trucks in and out. I saw dump trucks in and out. I saw a number of commercial type vehicles going in and out of that property. So whether it only happens at 7:30 in the morning and it ends at 5:30 at night, I don't know. I can only speak to what I saw when I was there yesterday, and that was quite a bit of commercial activity going on that property. He says he's been leasing to some of these companies for over 10 years, and that's absolutely true and absolutely illegal because the property, as you know, is zoned currently as estate residential. There shouldn't be any leasing going on that property at all. He talks in the statement of reasons for the proposed amendment. And I don't want to harp on this part too much, but I think it's worth noting because it's mentioned in the application a couple of times. They said, we're doing this to sort of dispel this confusion that has happened because of this other litigation. You know, there's this lawsuit. It's caused some confusion about what's permitted there, so we're going to have to apply for this. There's no confusion. The court order in that case was extremely clear, and that was none of those uses were permitted. And it's also very clear that landscaping uses, as Mr. Commissioner, you pointed out, landscaping uses are not agricultural. I'm sorry, it looked like you had a question?
No.
No, okay. Because please do, just jump in and ask. Again, you know, we saw in this presentation about these beautiful bright red and white barns with this local stone. But the truth is, that's not relevant to what you are supposed to be looking at tonight about whether this rezoning is appropriate. Even if they are beautiful, and I guess that's in the eye of the beholder, I think what you might hear after me is Mr. Gordon himself, the people that live right next door to this and look at this every day, they're going to tell you it's not that beautiful. When I decided to live where I live knowing that everything around me was zoned estate residential, I had no concept that there would be 11 bright red barns exactly in my line of sight. Again, I'm not going to talk about what's in the binder, but what you will see is it's not just that they don't like those buildings or they say, well, I don't think they're pretty, I don't like the stone. What they have found, and there's evidence that we've submitted to you, they've had appraisals done of their property. Their property values have dropped drastically now that there is, and maybe at one point we referred to it as a commercial park or an industrial park, and maybe they have changed a number of the uses. It's still a business park, whatever you want to call it. It is a cluster of buildings for businesses. Maybe the intensity of the uses have gone down a little bit since since the other piece of litigation, but the fact is it's a business park. And their property values as residential property has suffered from that. And there's documentation of that in that binder. They say in their application, and you saw, and I don't need you to go back to any of the slides, they've planted over 100 trees and shrubs on that property. That's great, although my understanding is that doesn't satisfy the requirements of the zoning, but it does bring to attention that they removed thousands of trees from this property. They moved tons of dirt around on this property. And our understanding is if you remove more than an acre of trees in Clermont County, you absolutely do need a permit. And there's no question, there was no permit ever applied for or granted to essentially clear cut the vast majority of this property. You've heard a lot about the people that like to come here and they love this property, it's beautiful. Well, my clients thought it was beautiful too until they cut down thousands of trees on the property. Oh, sorry. We've heard a lot about what a good neighbor he's going to be. He's brought in an 8-inch water main. What they didn't tell you is that they've refused to let the neighbor tie into that water main. They brought in upgraded electrical for all of these barns. They didn't tell you that they've refused to let any of the neighbors tie into that electric. So you can discount the idea of the good neighbor. You saw a lot about the property taxes the increase in property taxes that on this property, on the 11 acres. The property tax has gone up quite a bit. That's probably true because originally that property, when it was applied for, it was granted a CAUV or agricultural property tax reduction, even though no agriculture activities ever took place on that property. And once the county found out that there was no agricultural use on that property, they revoked that CAUV. And so it probably does look like a tenfold increase in property taxes now that the CAUV is gone. And we've heard a lot about how they went to the, they came to the township and we thought we were doing everything right. We were under the, we were under the understanding that this qualified as agricultural use, that these landscaping businesses qualified as agricultural use. We find that interesting. I'm not trying to personalize this, but the owner here is Mount Carmel Farms LLC, owned by Mr. Evans. We all know that Mr. Evans also owns Evans Landscaping. I can't help but wonder if Mr. Evans thought that landscaping businesses qualified as an agricultural use, why hasn't he converted all of his other business landscaping properties to agricultural uses? Why? Because he knows that landscaping businesses do not qualify as agricultural use. And that's been clarified by the court, it's been clarified by the county, it's been clarified by the township. Finally, you get into this, to the statement in support of the appropriateness. And again, they say that, well, landscaping is substantially similar to agriculture. That's just not true. There's case after case that supports that. In fact, the most current litigation confirms that as well. And as you've heard it today, 5 employees, 8 employees, although, and I really appreciate, the young man who was, starting that company. He's got 8 employees, and he's really excited about the opportunity, you heard him say it, the opportunity to grow his business. So those 8 employees, maybe there'll be 10, maybe there'll be 12, maybe there'll be more. And the way you've heard all of these businesses described, if you take away landscaping operations and you substitute that for heating and air conditioning company, it's the exact same thing. The employees show up in the morning, they get in the trucks, they get their equipment, they drive out, they do their jobs. Sometimes they may have to come back during the day to get more supplies or more equipment. They go back out, they do the jobs. Then they come back at the end of the day, they leave their HVAC trucks at their place of employment, and they drive their personal vehicles home. So you can stop thinking about this as landscaping. It could be any business, because that's what's really happening here. It's business. So that's really, I don't want to belabor it. That really addresses a lot of the items that were in the application. I can't help but note, there are a few things that come to my mind as we talk about this. Everybody has heard the phrase, it's better to ask for forgiveness than to seek permission. That's exactly what's happening here. You have somebody who's essentially done what they wanted with the property for a decade, and only when they were finally told that they weren't supposed to be doing that have they come back and asked for forgiveness, and forgiveness in the form of rezone the property so I'm allowed to keep doing what I wasn't really supposed to be doing in the first place. I also have to point out, and it was in the staff report, and actually, and Mr. Finney alluded to this too, this is a really unusual circumstance for a rezoning. I'm actually really glad you flipped the 2 cases you had tonight, so we were able to watch that first one. That's a really great example, right? A property owner had an idea of what they wanted to do on their property. They drew up a plan. They came here. They applied for the proper rezoning. It gets approved with some conditions. They'll probably have to go back and adjust their plan a little bit. Then they'll go to the trustees and hope that it gets approved at the trustee level. And if it gets approved at the trustee level, then they'll go get all the appropriate permits. They'll have to be inspected by the county, by the fire department, by all of the appropriate agencies. And once all of that's done, they'll build the improvement. This case, I mean, if I had put that out in bullet points for you, you could almost go exactly backwards on this case. There were no permits issued. The buildings were constructed. Then they find out that they weren't supposed to be doing it. It doesn't qualify as an agricultural use. The court and the township say it's illegal, you've got to stop. Rather than comply with the rules, they draw up a plan, but not a plan of what they intend to do. As you heard, actually, in your staff report, this plan is what you see is what you get. It's what's already there. And so it is what you see, which is, and I'll limit it to 9 buildings because those are the 9 that are in the township. What you see are 9 improperly built buildings without permits that aren't permitted under the current zoning. And if you approve it, you know what you get? Exactly what's out there now. And they can say they aren't going to build any more, and that's fine. But if you ask Mr. Gordon, he's going to tell you the 9 or 11 that are there already, that's enough. It's not a question of, well, don't build any more. What's there already is the problem. And so I'm going to wrap it up. it really brings us to two questions that we actually put on page 1 of that binder that was submitted to you. Question number 1 is, does Union Township expect citizens to follow the zoning regulations? We hope that the answer is yes. Question 2 is, when a citizen willfully violates those regulations, does the township have the will to enforce the rules? And again, we hope the answer is yes. Because the rules have always been clear. The current zoning on that property has always been clear. And so what we're asking you is, do not reward this behavior by changing the rules after the fact. When you look at your own zoning resolution, at what you're supposed to look at when considering a zoning resolution, this doesn't fly. And because of that, we would respectfully ask that this body, in any motion that you might consider, recommend denial of the application. That's all that I have. I will say that Jason Gordon is here tonight. His brother James is here tonight. They are two of the property owners that you've seen on some of these maps. And I think they may be able to speak much more passionately about what it's like to live next to this business park. Okay? I can answer any questions, or perhaps Mr. Gordon could answer those questions too.
Do you have any questions?
I have
Any questions? None.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you
Forbes.
very much.
Mr. Gordon?
I'm not as tall as Mr. Kenny or Mr. Forbes here, so I'm just gonna tilt this thing down. He stole my joke. I was gonna run through the binder too, but that's useless. I got 2 pages worth of notes, you know, from what Mr. Kenny and what Mr. Evans was trying to feed you guys. I just want you to imagine for a second that you live on a cul-de-sac, right? And at the end of that cul-de-sac, the neighbor's got 11 acres. It's all residential. And then he starts to build an industrial park at the end of your driveway. And over the years, he fills it with barns, and there's a mechanic, and there's derelict vehicles, and there's, you know, landscapers, and there's televacs, there's, you know, concrete sawing businesses, there's steel fabricators, there's anything. And then he puts lights on all these buildings that shine at your home. They're on all night. The buildings have these, you know, side lights on the side of them so they let natural light in during the day, but then the tenant leaves the lights on at night, and the light shines out of the buildings. It's a nuisance, is what it is. And then come to find out that your property is now worth 35% less than what it should be because of your neighbor. That's a tough pill to swallow when the township isn't helping you out and enforcing its own zoning resolution. So, I mean, that's what I'm asking for. I could go through all this stuff. I don't know that we need to. I mean, the word of the day is fraud. It's synonymous with Mr. Evans. You know, he built these buildings by his own admission as an agricultural guise, and put a landscaper in them. He himself is a landscaper. He knows that it's not agriculture. It's all a lie. The little piece of industrial there in Hamilton County, it's all surrounded by residential property. You know, my brother owns the property to the west. My dad owns the property to the southwest. You know, we moved back here to be away from it all. It was a beautiful piece of estate residential property. You see our yards are well manicured. We got beautiful homes on the properties. I mean, he's an island. There's a little island of industrial. What they didn't show you with the building G and the gutter guy is that he's got a large dumpster in front of that property that actually probably sits on the Clermont County side. So they were very choosy with the pictures that they decided to show you of the property. And then, you know, speaking to fraud, you know, Mr. Evans' signature, Exhibit T in his binders, is on 8 years of CAUV applications to the county. He paid no taxes. He stole money from the township, from the county, from the school district for 8 years. And now he wants to be rewarded by letting him do what he's been doing illegally for 12 years. So he owns, as he said, 800 acres in the nearby area, most of it in Hamilton County, already zoned industrial. Why didn't he build this in Hamilton County? I wouldn't have to sue him, right? There'd be nothing I could do. He did it because he could lie and get some agricultural exemptions. Let's not justify any of that by approving anything here. I mean, you guys are smart people. I don't need to tell you what to do. The mechanic being in there for 6 years and then suddenly chickens, laughable. It's laughable. So it's not even a building built for chickens. There's probably still the mechanic's lift in that building, and the chickens have to walk around it. I'm happy to answer any questions. Everybody's beat this thing to death tonight. Like I said, you guys know what's up. So anything for me?
Question?
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Williams.
So, Mr. Gordon, I hear what you're saying. What's your end game? What are you hoping to see happen?
Well, I'm currently what I believe is winning in court, but every time I get a win, he refuses to comply with the judge's order.
What happens if you win in court?
Yeah, I'm looking to have all of the buildings removed. And it's my understanding as well that the county is working in that direction as well. And there's no proper drainage on that. He spoke to the beautiful drains. They drain straight into the watershed in between the property lines. There's no detention. The small pond on the property doesn't drain any of the buildings. It just drains the parking lot. All of those buildings just go into it's like a 4-foot main that goes straight into the watershed. None of it was built properly, right? Because there was no permits for any of it.
But if it was built, if the agricultural exemption persists and the buildings are used, say, going forward agricultural, I don't think the county will tear them down.
No, for sure. And he could probably put 12 chickens in each building and claim agricultural use. I mean, there's a history of fraud on the property, and I think I've proved that in the binders that I gave you, and I'm proving it in court. So the buildings were built fraudulently. You heard him say he built Building C and immediately put a landscaper in there. Built it as an agricultural building, put a business in there. That's fraud.
But landscaping is permitted in the ER district, but with restrictions, and can I hear what you...
As a conditional use, which he didn't apply to get, right? And it's my understanding that all the vehicles would need to be stored undercover inside. You wouldn't be able to see them. We see snow plows. We see trucks. This in and out once a day thing is a joke. I mean, I saw the Must truck, the same truck, come by my house 6 times today. And the American landscaping trucks, they're in and out all day long too, getting materials. So it's not just 30 employees coming to work in the morning. It's 30 employees coming to work with their music loud and their exhaust off of their vehicles, and then they take the work trucks out, and then they bring the work trucks back, and they take them back out, and then it's a nuisance.
I don't have any further questions.
Mr. Toff, Mr. Shannon?
Good.
No, I have none.
Thank you, Mr. Gordon.
Thank you.
Nicole Gordon, if you'd like to speak.
Hello, my name is Nicole Gordon. I'm Jason's wife. And I first want to say, talking about the beautifulness of it, that's not beauty to me. Beauty to me was all of the woods that was there, the animals I got to see all the time, the family of foxes that were there that we could see on a weekly basis. Big red barns, that's not beauty to me. It's very hard to hear him talk and just lie about all kinds of stuff that's going on. I mean, for 10 years, been seeing cars coming in and out. If you could check with the U.S. Postal Service, you would see that businesses get mailings to these buildings back here. Doug knows, we all know that he knows that what he's doing is wrong. So it's very hard to hear the lies. It's hard for me to him saying that he's doing what's right for his kids, but what's he teaching his kids if he's lying and learning how to cheat the system? That's not teaching your kids anything but fraud. As far as it is just a nuisance now. When we moved back there, my kids were able to play, were able to ride their bikes up and down the road. They can't do that now because of all the cars that are going in and out, especially in the summertime, the dust that comes up because it's not all paved, like he said. There is a big gravel road, and all the dust that comes up and gets on our house, the kids can't ride their bikes down the lane. If they do, it's very dangerous. The noise, it's very different than when we first decided to build there. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The other Mr. Gordon. Apologize, should probably not refer to you that way.
I only have 3 points in addition to what they've already made. First thing I want to talk about is PD. I mean, when I found out that's what he was applying for, to get a PD designation on the on the property, I looked at your regulations, your resolution. It describes what you do with PD, and I don't see how this qualifies. You mean, it says very clearly in there you do that before you build anything. You have to have 20 feet of some kind of vegetative cover between the buildings and the people that surround it, if there's housing surrounding it. And it's all zoned housing around it except for that one little corner. I actually own the field right to the side of Building B, okay, which he was built right on a property line. He keeps pointing out, and so does his lawyer, that that building is mainly in Anderson Township, in Hamilton County. But they got permission to build that building by telling Union Township that it was agriculture. It is built 3 feet from my property line. There's no way he can screen that building from my property. He doesn't have room to do it because he built it on the property line because it was supposed to be a cattle barn, which it is not. He got permission to build it as an agricultural building through you guys, through the Union Township. And so you are responsible for that building. He keeps saying, don't worry about that building, that's in Anderson Township. If Anderson Township had given him permission to build it, guess what? It would be in Union Township because of the setback he'd have to have for that building if it was built legally. It was built illegally, and it should not have any kind of commercial operations going on it. It's not an agricultural building, and it's not regulated by Anderson Township. The final thing I want to talk about is drainage, and Jason touched on it. You know, you saw some pictures they showed you of this nice drain right in the middle of the parking lot, right? Well, all the drainage from that whole thing ends up on my property. Some of it goes through Jack Gratch's property, which is right to the south of him, but then it goes to the southwest. And I own the fields across there, and that's all my property. And what happens is, there's no plan. There's no way that they're holding any of the drainage. When it rains, it pours on my property. It floods my fields. It goes down a ditch along Gratch's driveway, cuts underneath of Gratch's driveway, which is all my property, goes down the front of my property, and it has been washing out my culvert. I got an estimate, I got several estimates on how to fix my culvert because I'm about to lose it. If I lose that, I have no access to my house. It's the only way into my house. Okay, it's going to cost me at least $15,000 to fix the water damage done to my culvert and the ground around the culvert because of these activities, and because there was no plan for how you would control any of the water that's running off of those beautiful asphalt parking lots that he built that he keeps talking about. You know, it is an asphalt concrete jungle he's put in there, and the property owners around him are paying the price through the value of our property, repairs. Jason didn't talk about how many times he's had to repair his front yard and his driveway because once they took all the trees and vegetation out of that hill, everything comes straight down. And Mr. Evans will tell you he put a detention over there, but he didn't permit it. And the county is telling him it's not legal and it's not proper, and they're not giving him permission to use it. So everything he's done in that property has been wrong. He's not done one thing that was permitted before he did it. He didn't get permits for the trees, for all the dirt he took out of there, for building the buildings, for doing the parking lot. Didn't get, the road he put in around Jason's property, didn't get a permit, put the road in. Just put it in over a weekend when nobody was looking. And that's what Mr. Evans does when he decides he wants to accomplish something. And now he's trying to get you to legitimize it because he's losing in court. And he knows that he's gonna be told that he can't run businesses out of that property. So he's asking you guys to take care of it for him, be his buddy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
Any questions?
No.
Mr. Gratch? If I pronounced that correctly. Is there anyone else to speak in opposition?
Yes.
I apologize, sir, if I butchered your name.
My name is John Gratch.
I said it right.
My friends call me Jack. And I gotta tell you that I've known Mr. Evans for 35 plus years. And in the past, I've considered him a friend. And I think that feeling was mutual. But this Mount Carmel Farm thing is, it's out of control. It's a pressure cooker down there. And I've tried several times to talk to Mr. Evans to no avail in an effort to resolve some of these issues, water issue being one, the noise, the alarms that go off, the additional traffic, everything that's been aforementioned in this meeting and in that 200-page pamphlet. I know Mr. Gordon, he's my neighbor on one side. I have to live with Reese and Lang. They're going to be my neighbors to the other side. So I'm in a bad spot. And I have to take the high road. And it's with a heavy heart that I got to present this information to you. And I think you'll find it enlightening. So with that being said, I take a lot of pictures. I have thousands of pictures. I take a lot of video. And though I'm not prepared to present it on the screen, I would like to, I brought just some of them with me today. But before I show those, there's a couple questions I have that I think you should be able to answer for me. One is, how has Union Township failed to serve me as a resident and protect my property value and protect me from what has transpired next door? This thing is 57,000 square feet under roof. To put that in perspective, that's the size of, that's roughly the same size as the football field, including the end zones at Paycor downtown. That's staggering. That's in my side yard, next to my side yard. It's, Mr. Evans, in 2017, this stuff was already underway. I had a pulmonary embolism. They sent me home to get my affairs together. Mr. Evans came over to my house after I was there for just 2 days. He told me he didn't want me to get excited, that he was going to build a couple more buildings. It was Building J and Building I that I can't tell you, words can't explain what it's like to have lights on all night, septic alarms going off whenever. I can show you a text message where I contact either Mr. Evans or Zach, his attorney, Zach Peterson. And if I can't get a hold of them, I call one of his guys down at the office. Sometimes they can get them turned off within a few hours. But there's been instances where the alarm at Building I believe, has run for over a week. I have audible recording of that. So when I tell you words can't describe this, when I'm coming down my driveway, and I'm just to the south of Building I have a beautiful home there. You'll see my driveway loops around the pond and kind of goes down to the hill before it makes a left. When we go down the hill, my granddaughter has asked me one time, this was one instance, "Ooh, what is he doing, Grandpa?" as he scuffles across the way to get back to building, one of the other buildings there with his pants halfway down. They're defecating in the tree line, and another time, my wife and I were on the patio, and a man come around, a Hispanic gentleman come around Building I, give us a full frontal relieving himself. No clue we were there. And that's just unacceptable. I'm not sure how a PD resolves these type of issues. So, moving forward. There's a water main comes over the hill, it's 8 inches. That's enough water to supply a lot of houses, a lot of buildings, a lot of usage. It's got a lot of pressure on it probably because it drops a couple hundred feet coming down that hill. We have well water. I've asked Mr. Evans to include us with getting water, and in fact, I went to the water board with him, and is it Crapsey and McGill? Is that the engineer we used on that? I was in on that, and the idea was that we're going to bring a water line over, this 8-inch line, and we sold the Waterworks on the idea that, I was along for the ride, but they were sold on the idea that this 8-inch line would serve other properties. You see, I have a total of about 60 acres right here, all of which will probably get developed when I'm gone. But I believe the Waterworks was under the assumption that if we bring this line over, it could be sent other ways. But there's a question as to who owns that line. Does it belong to the county, or does it belong to you? That's my question. And if it belongs to Doug, and why is there an easement granted to the county to take care of this water line? And who would pay the bill for the repairs in the event this is a private water line and it breaks and it has to be repaired? At whose cost is that going to be? The other question I have is, and I need water. I need water. My grandbabies swim in a little pool on my back patio filled with well water. Well water that we bring up from the aquifer. Well, Mr. Dave Yost, our Attorney General, found that there was some illegal dumping going on and ordered it be cleaned up, and there are monitoring wells to hopefully detect any contamination into the aquifer. The same aquifer that I draw water out for my babies to swim in. So I think it would behoove us all to just take a step back and look at really what's going on. Everything you've heard about these buildings is true. At that, I want to share some pictures with you about construction. I'm no expert, but I do know a little bit about general construction. First off, Mr. Finney told us about the beautiful stonework, and I can appreciate that because I have some pictures of the beautiful stonework from my view. Would you like me to bring them up here and pass them around?
Yeah, if you would start with Mr. Wing on my left.
These pictures are taken from my property line. I am on my property taking these pictures. That looks like janky construction, like it's ready to fall over the hill. Well, Mr. Finney tells you that there are trees that block the view. That's my view on my back patio. Mr. Gordon, can y'all hear me okay? I talk loud. Mr. Gordon made some claims about the water and how it's eroding the creek. This is the outlet where it dumps into the creek in the tree line. Now, Mr. Gordon incurred a lot of erosion in his part of the stream, and though I'm no expert hydrologist by any stretch of the imagination, I can tell you that during the construction of this project, there was absolutely no erosion control methods employed. And I have pictures to that effect. This is after a rain. This is one of the last ones. I have to offer. Okay. As far as a cut and fill, is a cut and fill permit required for this job on an agricultural?
Not from the township.
Not from the township. Very good. All right, well, our time is all valuable, and I want to thank you for hearing my concerns and answering some of my questions. I don't want to be collateral damage on this. I don't know how I'm going to recoup what I've lost. I have a beautiful home, and I have an appraisal here I'd like to share with you. How do I recoup my, since zoning's failed me, how do I recoup this loss? I mean, that's a legitimate question. Can somebody please explain that to me? I'd like to know how this board would suggest I get compensated for my loss monetarily and my loss of peace of mind at my home, because there is none. Words can't describe what it's like to have that in your side yard. Paycor Stadium, busted up in 9 or 10 or however many buildings there is. To add insult to injury, what I thought was my friend has betrayed me in this process. And he's left me with no alternative other than one of a legal route. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Questions?
Can I have my stuff back?
Pictures there,
Pictures
appraisal there.
appraisals here. Is there anyone else to speak in opposition? Do you have a sign-in sheet, sir?
I gave it to you.
Probably up there.
James Gordon.
Yep, James.
I think I've got it.
Did you lose it already?
So I'm James Gordon. I live at 4314 Mount Carmel Road. I'm actually like just northwest outside of this picture. This is like brilliantly cropped to just put my house out of the picture here. So I built about 2 years ago. When I was building, some of this was going on. So people told me, you know, why would you do that? I think it's probably a common question, like why would you build a house out here when this is going on? My dad and my brother Jason both advised me against it. I figured I was living in a very busy section of town, Linwood Avenue, right off of Beachmont Avenue, so cars, semis, all hours of the day. I thought there's no way this could be as bad. I don't have anything that you guys haven't heard already. All I can say is that I wish I had listened to them. I had no idea it was as bad as it is. It's not cars going in at 7:30 and then coming back at 5 and then leaving. It's all day. You are all welcome to come sit on my back deck at any time and listen to it. I wake up in the morning, I let my dog out, there's people smoking, talking. I can hear their conversations from my deck. I go out 20 minutes later with a cup of coffee, they're still there, or it's another group of people, just totally different group, in and out. I was building a garden yesterday and I counted a dozen cars flying up the gravel driveway and just dusting my entire yard with how fast they're going. They're flying 30, 40 miles an hour on a gravel drive. It's insane to me how bad it actually is. And that's all I really have to say.
Is this the gravel drive that runs between, I think it's your father's house?
Yes.
Behind, so there's a much larger road that goes around the house, and then there's the gravel, is that gravel drive a private drive?
That's a good question. Is the gravel drive a private drive?
There's a couple different gravel driveways. From Mount Carmel Road, there's a large driveway, it's about a half mile long. It was the only easement to that property for the first 8 years that he was running businesses out of back there.
And then there's a short section that goes in front of your house.
My property is one lane. It's a 30-foot easement, but there's a watershed on one side, so it couldn't be expanded. It's one lane, and he ran hundreds of cars across it a day. Tractor trailers, full-size tractor trailers, track vehicles, bulldozers, backhoes.
Going across the gravel rather than going around?
Across the single-lane gravel road in front of my house on a regular basis.
And even though there's paved access, they're still taking the gravel road. It's not like they're going around.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else to speak in opposition?
I'll speak again.
Generous offer, but at this point, we will close the portion of this meeting subject to public comment. I will note that everyone has maintained good decorum throughout this. Now, we are about to take an action that is likely to make some in the room upset. Please maintain that decorum here in the room, out into the parking lot, and know that this case does come before the Union Township trustees.
Do you want to call for a short recess? Does anybody need to use facilities?
How are we?
I'm good.
I'm good. Bill, are you all right?
I'm okay. Okay.
All right. I think we'll continue, so let's.
Charge forward.
talk about it.
All right. What a mess.
Yeah. Yeah, without a doubt. This is the most complicated case that I've seen since
Yeah,
I've been
it's-
on the commission.
Yeah, myself included. I mean, we've got we've got two options. Approve it with a slew of modifications and restrictions, or deny it. I guess we need to get everybody's take on it.
I'm a deny.
It's tough because the benefit of planned development is you give the township greater authority and control over what goes on through the major amendment process. So if they would change the function of a single building, you have to come back and participate in that process. But we have to weigh whether that will actually occur at a point in the future.
Well, that's true. What's your position?
Mr. Toth?
One building is being used for agriculture now. after we visited them in October. That's, to me, I just can't get over that hurdle, personally, that I think it was misrepresented. Therefore, it did not come before us at all. It all passed through the administrator's office. Was not presented in the proper form to do it the right way. So, and one building now is being used for agriculture, the other are not. So, that's my 2 cents.
Mr. Shannon?
I'm sorry, what Bill say?
Mr. Shannon indicated that he is in favor of denying.
Oh, there's three right there. The only concern I've got, if it's denied, will those buildings come down? I don't see those buildings come down. Or some of them, maybe it's possible, and I'm opening to formulate.
That's up to the courts.
That's above our pay grade.
And landscaping is a conditional use of state
It is.
residential.
It's
a great
conditional use, but not at the intensity level.
Yeah, right.
that's
Correct,
going on.
and the setbacks.
The intent of the ER landscape is for the owner-operator and 100-foot setbacks and 1 or 2 buildings, not 11 buildings. 9 buildings. We don't have control over very much control over building B, E, and E1, but we've got control over all the others. They're within our district, and how this happened, I don't quite understand, but these buildings were constructed under the auspices of agriculture.
And it's not.
And it's not the case. Now, so do we, recommend approval with clampdowns to remove all the activity? Then what's success rate?
How do we
Enforce that.
enforce it? We don't have the ability to enforce it. That's my biggest consideration with this, is if we were to push it through as PD and we're taking his word that he's going to do this, we have no way to follow up. And, we've got one inspector. So.
Right.
So I'm denial.
How can it be PD if it's already there?
Yeah, it's already,
But that,
again, it's what you
as
get
you
what
said,
you
Eric,
see.
that's up to the next level.
Mhm. I think being in the courts is where it needs to be.
So what would we include in a motion to deny? So in the staff report, since it doesn't fall in a focus district, at least from the 2020 plan standpoint, we've got to continue patterns of high-quality residential growth consistent with the character of the township. To encourage use of creative site design, but you're right, this has been operated as a business park.
Yeah,
And it's
exactly.
surrounded, Mr. McCormick, can you bring up the zoning map and show us
The next closest to.
the properties that are surrounding it, the color of the properties, the nature of the properties surrounding? And that's all ER district, is that correct? Purple, and that shot is all ER district?
That's the property right there that I,
So in Union Township, it's entirely surrounded by ER.
Correct.
oh, it's right there. Yeah, you're right, it's right there.
Nowhere near any other corridors.
I think we've all spent a huge amount of time on this case, more than we typically do, trying to be prepared for this. But I just don't see a way to, again, if we make it PD, we have there's nothing to control, in terms of it's already built.
Well, it becomes, it becomes controllable at that point, but how successful would we be, and what restrictions would we have to lay down on it? The staff report has some significant restrictions, but I thought of about 4 additional ones, but they wouldn't allow any activity on on the property outside of agricultural and one or possibly two landscaping activities. The rest of it has to stop, and the traffic levels have to stop. There's nothing, the county is responsible for the water and the drainage. We don't have control. We can make sure that retention is taken care of in the PD, but I don't know where you would put. I've driven the property, and I don't know where you put a retention pond.
Yeah, I don't, they'd need to buy the Gordon property and, but, yeah, I'm convinced it's a denial. I can't be convinced the other way now.
And Mr. Toft, you're the same mind? And Mr. Shannon?
That's
I can formulate a motion to deny if you like.
I think that's the way it's going.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips.
Then what's the course of it? Not the course of what they're going to do, then it's not really. I'm gonna be glad that way. It's all just on the list.
Keep that away from the microphone.
Okay, we'll present I'm coming up with two findings of fact. What we talked about, the property with the buildings being built under the auspice of agriculture, and with the recent report from the zoning inspector in October, there were no agricultural uses noted even on the property. So except for, and he was referring to landscaping being not agriculture, which they're not, even though there were two of them there. Would also include something on the nature of the residential area, and that it's surrounded by state residential, and that, as we've heard tonight, this project has created a significant hardship to the surrounding residents.
Yep.
All right. Things can be pieced together.
It's okay.
All right, I'm almost done. All right, I'll make this motion and we can see if we get a second, and then we'll discuss any adjustments to it. Regarding case 2-23-Z, applicant Mount Carmel Farms LLC, parcel number 393-110B012. The zoning commission finds that the submitted PD application zone change request is not consistent with the Horizon 2030 land use plan and does not meet all of the plan development application requirements of a PD district plan. Therefore, this commission recommends the submitted plan be denied based on the following findings of fact. Fact one, the applicant has built multiple structures on the subject parcel under the auspice of agricultural use. However, in August of 2022, the township zoning inspector inspected the property and issued a 15-day zoning citation letter on October 12th, 2022, which acknowledged unauthorized commercial uses and structures on the property at that time. The unauthorized structures noted were the structures that had been placed on the property through the agricultural exemption process rather than the conventional zoning permitting process. No clear agricultural uses were observed on the site at the time of the inspection. That's from the zoning report. Second finding, the subject parcel is virtually surrounded by other estate residential parcels within Union Township. The intensity of the unauthorized activities on the subject parcel has created a significant hardship for surrounding residents, and this board does not believe that rezoning the parcel to PD plan development in order to bring some of those activities and building construction into compliance is appropriate. And that's all I have for the motion.
Do I have a second? I'll second. I've regularly made and seconded the motion. Any discussion?
Anybody want to make a modification? I do
I
want to,
want to reference the fact that right there on the other side is all industrial, Anderson Township. That doesn't really concern us.
That doesn't really,
affect us.
It's relevant to our case.
I think I might have issued the wrong date in the,
you said August.
I said August of 2022.
Should've been,
Oh,
Yeah, he went out there, but I think the letter went out.
The letter went out.
oh, the letter went, yeah, it was
Yeah.
conducted in August and the letter went
Right,
out. So
right,
that was
right,
correct.
yeah.
That was
This was
correct.
August, letter went out in October.
All right.
Any further discussion? Ms. McCormick, if you call the roll.
Mr. Shannon?
No, a vote in the affirmative will deny the zoning
Yes,
application.
yes approves the denial.
Mr. Toft?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Wing?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion carries.
Motion carries.
At this time, do we have any new business? Further new business? So do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
I have a second. I have a regularly made and seconded motion to adjourn at 10:28 PM. Mr. McCormick, if you call the roll.
Mr. Shannon? Oh, Mr. Toft?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Wing?
Yes.
Motion carries.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your time.